Yeah.
What a
No, but
Shakespearean tragedy. That's all I could really say to describe that. I was like, if in a just world, like if the left had better instincts when it came to creating good media, because the left used to make very good media that made their messaging work very effectively. Like
yeah.
you and I've talked about Pleasantville or any of those other kinds of films. Like it's terrible messaging, terrible. I mean, it's subversive propaganda, but it's well made subversive
Yeah.
propaganda.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
the Cape crap of today, not so much. And I'm just like, if you had like if Aaron Sorkin in his prime was like 25 or 32 today, and he's writing a script, it wouldn't be like the Tea Party is the American Taliban. No, actually, it would be like, I'm
Yeah.
going to tell the story of this influencer, and I'm
Yes.
going to
No,
arc it as
100%.
a Netflix style miniseries like The Queen. And then all
Yes.
of a sudden, I'm going to tell the story of this person, and I'm going to actually and you can even cut away like HBO, like they did with Band of Brothers. And like after the dramatization plays out with everybody, and then we cut to the real woman, and then they're just like, well, yeah, all that happened. And I deeply
Yeah.
regret everything. And here,
There's this there was this
it would
Netflix show
work.
from...
It would work. But I'm not in this for
Yeah.
money, so I can't pitch this to people.
No, of course. I mean, but like, but see, nobody learns the lessons of influencers past, and so we're caught in the cycle of samsara over and over again, to where like the old ones have to plead for attention by ginning up new controversy, and the new, fresh, hot spring chicken new ones have to come in and just totally embarrass themselves in ways that are not thought of before. But this
Very true.
But this is a very sad day. Ozzy Osbourne has unfortunately passed away, and
Keith Richards still remains.
Keith Richards still remains, yeah. So RIP to a legend. I wasn't like a big fan of his solo stuff. Like, of course, my old man was a huge fan of Black Sabbath back in the day. Me personally, I mean, I liked Ozzy, but I also liked Ronnie James Dio, who unfortunately also passed away a while ago. But yeah, it's very sad. I mean, he did play his last show, and he had an amazing lineup. And what I would say about Ozzy Osbourne is that, you know, in spite of all the controversy with his wife and so forth, Ozfest as an event basically created the lion's share of my childhood in terms of music. Like every single band I grew up listening to, that I learned about when I was a little kid because of WWE, or that I later discovered when I was a teenager, all of those bands that represent what they call the new wave of American heavy metal, like, name any of them, they were given birth, or they were at least given huge props and a huge boost in their career by Ozfest. Like even bands you wouldn't even think of. Like the only way, the first few people that learned, for example, about Meshuggah in North America was because of Ozfest. Pantera, would they have been as big without Ozfest? Maybe not. Certainly all the bands us like Soylenials, listen to, like Breaking Benjamin, Linkin
God, ain't that
Park.
the truth?
Yeah, Slipknot, Korn, Disturbed, Lamb of God.
Everything you might have saw at a 2009 Vans Warped Tour show comes from Ozfest.
Yes, exactly. Everything you would have saw in 2009 Warped Tour, you would have saw in 2002 Ozfest, which, by the way, was the objectively best Ozfest, was 2002. But anyways, so yeah, RIP to Ozzy Osbourne. And it's funny. One of my favorite stories is Sharon Osbourne was the manager for Coal Chamber, and she got into a big spat with the Insane Clown Posse because I think like Coal Chamber, they were new and they sort of bombed.
Are you saying coal or cold?
Coal Chamber.
Okay, it just determines what kind of joke I was going to make later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of it, like I will say,
we're in a cold chamber right now, chat. You're locked in here with us.
Some of it was cool back in the day, but they do have some pretty good songs. Like I prefer Daz, their singer. Like he's actually a pretty educated guy. He's all up into like New World Order, Illuminati stuff. But like I think he's pretty based too. I wonder if Metal Sucks and all those other metal quote unquote journalists have done a hit piece on the singer of Coal Chamber for being like a MAGA person or whatever. But no, yeah, Loco is an objectively amazing song. But they bombed at the Gathering of the Juggalos, and I think like ICP like kicked them off of the tour, and then like Sharon Osbourne had it out for ICP ever since. And then now ICP got canceled. Like I believe Violent J got canceled for some of the allegations, but whatever. So yeah, your childhood wasn't, if you were a chud millennial that loved metal music growing up in North America, your childhood was invented by Ozfest. So that's, end rand. So we speaking, yeah, but how am I gonna like segue the main topic of this stream from Ozfest? Well, I guess you could say that a lot of people they see the music industry now as not having a sort of like ever-present influence on the lives of younger people. And I think that's for a very conscious purpose. Apart from like, mainstream hip hop or mainstream pop music, it seems that guitar-driven music has sort of been sunsetted in the popular imagination, especially for younger people. Although I will say there are younger people that are rediscovering some of these bands that got their first legs on Oz tours, such as Breaking Benjamin and other ones. But I think that it is indicative of what we're going to talk about today in some weird way. I have to figure out the theory cell connection. But we're talking about...
There is an old tweet by a friend of mine that had taken a clip from that movie The Martian with Matt Damon.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, when certain people are confronted with like things they have to do IRL, but their whole shtick is being online, and he takes the clip from the guy and he says, I got a theory cell the shit out of this. Rather than saying I'll science the shit out of it. And I'm like, man, that's so true for like half the people I know, including the show to a large extent. Because what do we say? What do we say on this show? We're on Twitter, so you don't have to be.
We're trying not to be. We're trying to be more friendly to people who are not terminally online. But like, but I think that
there are consequences to that, as we've recently seen.
Oh, of course. But as we will see, though, for this episode, though, I think we have to sort of examine that sort of thing about terminally online, because we're talking about today the amazing book, although it's like one large essay and a bunch of mini essays, The Burnout Society by Byung-Chul Han.
That's like all of his books is one big essay and like 3 accompanying mini essays.
Yeah. But it's totally relevant, I think, for the events of the past few weeks. And, as much as I want to break away from it, I think that we're sort of compelled to talk about recent events in terms of this. I wouldn't call it a debate. I would call it a spectacle. But you want to have some words?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was definitely spectacle. It was spectacle 2.5 months ago, I think, when we saw. These have happened for a while. I think, like, wasn't Michael J. Knowles on one, and then Jordan Peterson was on one, where it was like 20 guys just all came up to trash Jordan, or Dr. Peterson, but like, and of course, I think that's where like Sarah Stock came from, was from like a viral Jubilee clip that came out like 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
And so of course the latest one that happens, right? To me, what came out of that, from my look away, was like, oh wow, the left has managed to successfully re-engineer the Ben Shapiro goes to college campuses to own like libtard freshmen. That's what it feels like in terms of media reconstruction.
Do you remember the Gamergate one where it's
I do.
Christina Hoff Sommers and Steven, what's his face? Steven Crowder and I think it was someone else.
No, it wasn't
Milo. No, I think maybe. Yeah, we're like, and Steven Crowder was just like begging the audience to like shut up, and it was just like, I remember looking at that back in the day. I actually watched that live, and I was like, "What's the point of this?
Spectacle.
What's the upshot of this?" Oh, exactly.
In the same way that Crowder is more famous now for the "change my mind" meme than he is anything else, right? Yeah. And apart from his disaster with his wife, but that's but I mean, at the end of the day, the greater consciousness knows who Steven Crowder is because of a meme than they are because of any marital or spousal issue. And so it feels strange because on one hand, the left
he actually said this, Prude. Steven Crowder, like, it was 2016 was an innocent time. It really was.
It's innocent, but also at the same time, we've learned. I don't want to say we, or even use the royal we, but a large section, there is this great deal of memory loss, because one thing because we inhabit spaces where the timeline constantly refreshes whatever we're talking about with the latest headline, like You know, not too many people are talking about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. More people are talking about this dead cat story that is the Russiagate stuff. There's been more conversation started by very well-known lolcows like Joel Berry or James Lindsay and the rest of them, to where we have this terminal goldfish brain. And it remains very difficult to remain consistent on any particular issue at any length of time, because you are engaging in a medium that does not allow you to do that. So what does that mean? It means for anyone who is engaged online politically, your ability to have, I don't know, let's just say institutionally, in quotation marks, if you were to have any sort of institutionalized pedagogy for how to train people, how to let them know, here's how things have been, these are the things that we've learned from these selection pressures, these ban waves, these debankings, these depersonings, none of that exists, right? Like, so we all have this collective memory of, for anyone who's been around for any length of period of time or came of age during the stuff like Gio and I have, like being engaged politically for over 10 years, both offline and online. You have this really weird record of history that is both severely jumbled and mishmashed through memes and not, you know, sometimes it's really hard. Streams, like, remember when things used to be on Google Hangouts? You want to feel a little, back in my day, things used to be on Google Hangouts. You know, like, we can all, like, I remember these things. It was strange.
Or like in group lingo.
Of course,
could just say locker, school locker right now. People would get that in their audience.
Yeah, because they know your story. We've got lore, right? Like that's another weird term. And I once jokingly said, you know, if you don't know these things IRL, or like when you're talking to people and you like let these things slip IRL, you know, you're kind of engaging in a right-wing form of polari. Like, I'm not here to imply that you're a homosexual. I'm just here to imply that you're speaking in a very coded language that most people aren't going to get in the real world, or at least people who aren't older than you or aren't already engaging in the same media consumption that you are. So because of all this, we don't have there's no pedagogy on the right outside of these little selective camps that you're either ride or die loyally to, or like you have to figure it out the hard way on your own. Thankfully, I think cooler heads have prevailed in the sense that, like, yeah, things are monetized and super gamified now, but like you can, if you're a smaller account or if you're a smaller person watching the scene and you're just like writing in your like sub 1,000, you know, reader list Substack, you're probably learning a lot just by seeing how these guys interact and play the game. However, it does come at the consequence, however, that because we inhabit such like niche bubbles, leaving said bubble to make contact with the enemy or just reality, I think can lead to a violent crash where the age-old question of like, screw your optics, I'm going in, has to be replayed. And of course, it does come at a consequence. I mean, and again, if you're like a diehard believer in your ideals and you have no problem going for it, go for it.
Yeah.
But I also know that you and I know, and can probably think of like half a dozen names of people who've been doxxed or debanked or depersoned, essentially, to where unless you're writing and making content, good luck getting back re-entered into the real world. You know, like I've said this before.
Some form of money, or you have some form of patronage.
Yeah, like that's the thing, right? It's like, for me, it's like, if I were to ever become a billionaire, like I would invest in a charitable trust of like depersoned or doxed right-wingers as like a pension fund. I want to like go, I want to give
mutual aid.
Literally, I do literally aid to my mutuals. I literally want to give Millennial Woes a pension one day when he's like, I'm done, right? Like when he's like 50 or 60 or whatever, I want to be like, all right, Mr. Woes, you can apply here to the Prudentialist Charitable Trust for like depersoned right-wingers. And then all of a sudden he gets to collect.
Elon Musk going to do that?
Isn't it funny that Elon Musk had sent out his goodwill to say, I will sue for free speech on your behalf if you've ever said anything that gets you canceled on this platform, and he wastes it on an e-girl. He wastes it on Bronze Age Shoddy. Of all people, I'm sorry. I can think of like 100 more deserving people. I like
Bronze Age Shoddy.
I know you do. But I don't care. From my perspective, it happened one time, and it hasn't happened again.
I can't think of another example.
Exactly.
And now Elon's not going to do that for right-wingers anymore anyways. So,
well, yeah, because he's kind of been spurned by the Trump camp. And although I think he hasn't really. He's still cringe. Like, this is the thing. Like, you can take the Redditor off Reddit, but the Redditor can't leave him. It's like a parasite. It's like GERDs, you know, it's awful.
Oh, my God.
There's my rant.
No, but I think that this was so terrible in so many ways. And like, not to cast shade on Pine Sap, but I think like I still wear a fez. It's just I'm too it's my earphones are in the other my earbuds are in another bag upstairs and I forgot. And it's like it's kind of hard to like juggle. I mean, I could try, but I hate like I used to do that with BTR, right? Like I used to like be constantly like fidgeting with my earphones. But anyways, no, I think that there could have been a million different ways to have approached that differently. But I think the problem is, and this goes back, ironically enough, for someone that was sort of casually without, I think, not really understanding the sort of, well, what are you talking about, the Schmittian friend enemy distinction. I think the fact that you're going into this very like, oh, nobody's going to get this reference. I mean, I barely get this reference because I'm not a boomer. But if anyone remembers the Gong Show, I'm sure there's some boomers that listen to us. If you're going to this like Gong Show style debate platform, we have like this circle of people around like a sort of holy figure of debate, whether it be Jordan Peterson, who actually has lost more debates than anything, and or Mehdi Hassan or whoever. It's like, first of all, you're getting into territory where, yes, exactly, Poundy and Yoko, Carl Schmitt rolling in his grave. You're getting into a territory where you are legitimizing the spectacle that you were engaged with. And basically anything that you say, unless you're a super high IQ level debater, is going to be used against you, essentially. Now, I could have thought of ways I could have not touched upon those very, very precise, very, how shall I say it? The very clear and obvious mental traps that Hassan Media is trying to put you in, right? Like mentioning certain regimes in the 20th century, I think was a bad move. I think like not understanding the material, but also like just the whole thing itself is not really meant for any sort of intellectual discourse. This is not how discourse happens. This is how a spectacle happens. And the problem with that is the beginning question was, is Donald Trump following the Constitution? Now, I think Pine Sap was correct to say that like he should have framed it in a way of like, listen, both you and me for different reasons do not have, and by the way, there is this Twitter space that broke it down by, should I mention him, Prude?
To you, buddy. It's your show.
No, I know. But like, okay, I was listening to a certain Twitter space by Marcel, who was breaking it down. And not to say like I agree with everything Marcel Dumas says or believes in. There's plenty of things we disagree with. But I think his analysis of it to me was the best, in the sense that you could have weeded yourself out of these very sticky questions of mentioning certain regimes of the past, having a sort of trying to be a sort of like trollish, playing towards this like very amoral position, or trying to like get Mehdi Hassan to play into some like moral conundrum or whatever. But I think, like, again, this is not my point. This is Marcel's. Is that, and again, like I say, I don't endorse everything Marcel says or does. But the point is, both you, like, say if I was Pine Sap, both you and me do not agree with the sort of framework of the Constitution as a sacred document, because it was meant to be a shield for people that founded and built America, but it's not. And Mehdi Hassan comes from a very sort of like international jet-setting class where he has a very negative opinion of nationalism, because I believe he's an Indian Muslim. And of course, India being controlled by Hindu nationalism, they have a very contentious issue with that, right? So, I mean, but okay, not just Pine Sap, but say if I was debating Mehdi Hassan, I would say, okay, both of us are in a position where we're sort of like a little bit on the outskirts of the sort of history of our own countries, right? Now, okay, but we choose different paths. Now, Mehdi Hassan is very hostile to the idea of a nation having a founding people and having a sort of set of law and rules. And the reason that he wants to pull these things apart is because he himself has this very, foundational problem with nationalism. And so he gravitates towards leftist ideas. Whereas me, myself, being descendant of Ellis Islanders, although my father's family's been in Canada for quite some time, knowing that I would never be as Canadian as, for example, my uncle, whose family has been here for 300 years, right? I to realize that maybe you don't have that same level of thing, but to actively work to undermine it is like pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. And that should have been the opening salvo of the discussion. When you get into the abstractions of like, well, this is Schmitt's friend-enemy distinction, even though, there's sort of like not really pinning down what that means, because to most people listening to that, most normal people, what they mean is, you're trying to oppress me, I want to oppress you, there is no sort of common set of assumptions or frameworks that we can work with, and therefore the whole discussion is moot to begin with. And the media can easily, and this is the point, and this is what's so hard to fight against, and this is why I do not recommend debating, quote unquote, having been somebody who has been in a debate show for almost 3 years, it goes nowhere. Because there's a whole bricolage of assumptions, and there's a whole bricolage of images of thought and of common assumptions that have come from the sort of like modern period at the end of World War II that media can then retreat back into, to be like, well, this is not a normative position. So therefore you have to justify as a quote unquote dissident what is the problem with those normative assumptions. But I think, and again, I'm not hating on PineSap. I'm not trying to like gin up controversy. I'm just saying that this is one example among many, Prude, which you were alluding to. The problem is that when you are growing up in a certain online environment, and you are sort of marinated in not actually, I'm not picking on PineSap. I'm saying in general, I've seen this many times with many people on the online right. When you don't spend enough time cultivating your ideas, when you don't spend enough time trying to pick apart why normal people believe what they believe, whether they were indoctrinated, whether the common assumptions were what's the metaphor, Prude? Snowballed into existence through various processes of history and various parts of, sociology and so forth, theory of mind. When you are only in a sort of online echo chamber of various Chan boards, of Twitter, of forums, of Telegram groups, of group chats, then your normative assumptions are not to find a way to slip in heterodox ideas into the minds of normal people and make them sound reasonable. Your normative assumption is, what will my group chat think of me if I don't say certain based things? And I've seen this so many times. I've seen this on that Jubilee podcast, whatever clips I do, unfortunately, press the unmute button on when it scrolls past my timeline. So unfortunately, you have a sort of meta where you're not trying to engage in discourse with a hostile party, which I believe, first of all, is a stupid idea. Because when you're using the lingo that you would use in a group chat, when you're expressing ideas that you would not express to normal people, but you're expressing them freely to someone who is an explicit enemy. Mehdi Hasan is an explicit leftist enemy that would want to condemn everybody, even to the right of, I don't know, Bernie Sanders or whatever. So the problem is your perception of things in terms of legitimacy comes from that online space. And for example, like, what was I going to say? I'm tripping myself up. So in a way, it's like, okay, what will my group chat think? For example, talking about Francisco Franco. For men, and because me and you, Prude, I'm more of an old head, but like we're both old heads at this point. In the online environment of the right wing online, Francisco Franco is the better position than who.
Oh, yeah.
The failed art student, right?
For optical reasons.
For optical reasons. But among average, like low information, normal people, that is still you endorsing a fascist dictator. It is not like, well, in 2017, I was reading Codrianu, and I was reading Alexander Dugin, and I was reading Evola. I was not a Whig nut. I was not an alt-righter. It's like, bro, it doesn't matter.
I was just an appreciator of certain 20th century literature.
Exactly. Like, oh man,
I'm a librarian.
You don't know. You don't know, man. You don't know. Like, who is the one in Austria that was the Catholic fascist? Was it Doluth?
His name escapes me.
His Dolus or not?
The
not
chat
Dolus.
will tell us in about a minute and a half.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, no, bro, that's the real based opinion.
I remember that always being used.
Yeah.
I remember that always being used as a Carlsbad polemic, making fun of certain crowds.
Yeah, Dolphus.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, Primo di Rivera and Codriano and Dolphus, like, and Franco, it's like, man, they're based, helicopter means I'm not like one of those work nuts. It's like, bro, you don't understand that all of this is terrible. To someone who is a little bit more educated, like Media Hassan in debating, and he probably knows some of the references you're using, he could easily pull back and say, well, that guy's a fascist.
Well, also, most of what he played anyway was a Mott and Bailey game anyway.
Exactly. Well, explain to the audience, because I'm even kind of confused. Isn't Mott and Bailey where you have one position, then you immediately
you take an outrageous position,
yes,
and then you retreat upwards into, well, really, this is what I mean is just this. You go into you basically bury a outrageous or radical talking point into a safer position that you can defend more effectively. There was a lot of that. And
here's the thing:
this is the second time I have watched a full Jubilee thing. The other one I watched was the Jordan Peterson one.
Yeah.
Because I had to see how bad it was. Because I had my normie friends talk about it. Like, my friends are not my IRL and my church friends, with the exception of one who is a former Twitter mutual of mine. Although he's off Twitter now for law school. They're all kind of like, they're not on the internet. So when I hear like them talking to me like, oh man, Peterson looked really bad, I'm like, oh, what do you mean? And they showed me the clip and I'm like, oh yeah, I saw this. And I'm like having to keep like my like facial feature, like my facial expressions kind of just a little adjusted. So it's like, oh yeah.
No, but, and here's the thing, I'm not bashing anybody who...
We're not here to do that. That's not why we're here.
No, it's value neutral analysis. Like, if you want to read My Legionnaire by Codriano, if you want to read Hans Hermann Hoppe, if you want to read other spicy literature, then, fine. I'm not morally condemning anybody. I'm not, to tell you the truth though, this is going to sound terrible. I'm not even going to morally condemn Media Hassan, because Media Hassan is basically fighting for his interests when it comes to wanting to tear apart the foundation of the Western world. Like, let's be real here, right? Now, if you choose a different path, if you are someone who is of sort of, let's say, for lack of a better term, heritage, Ellis Islander or whatever, right? And you could say, like, okay, there is a common understanding. Now, I know full well, for example, my lineage does not go far as back as, say, our friend Fortisak's, right? But at the same time, if you sort of honor the people that built something great, and you say, okay, but you have to realize that a lot of it is trying to expect a moral clarity or a moral argument from your opponent when they will not give you anything of the sort, because it's in Media Hassan's immediate direct interests to never concede any point of deference or contention or any point of even basic decency to, and he even said it to the guy, to the Pine Sap guy. He's like, no, I don't consider you worthy of anything. And it's like, you know what? Fine. You know what I mean? Like that is the rule of the game. But the problem is that in a way, people fight for their interests. And so in that sense, I'm not even really condemning Media Hassan either. Because like at the end of the day, it's his job. In his world, it is much better to expose these people as a bunch of evil Austrian painter fans and a bunch of losers than it is not. And so, okay, that's the name of the game. I mean, at the end of the day, power and politics are about one thing. You're right. I mean, it's not one thing, but that's a huge part of it. But when you're going up there and saying, I'm a Machiavellian, I'm going to plan this out, it's like, that's not really the point. You know what I mean? Like, even the free speech thing, I will respectfully disagree with Pine Sap on. It's like free speech, if you're in North America, and or I should say if you're in the United States of America, because the other Western countries forget about it. It's like free speech is the only tool you really have at the end of the day, right? And I think that, as much as I agree with this sort of free speech fundamentalist libertarian critique, I think that's a critique that people on the right have within their own circles. But when it comes to expressing your beliefs outside, you can't like really let them know or express this thing where it's like, well, you know, free speech is a tool that we're going to use, but as soon as we're in power, we're going to get rid of it. It's like, that's according to like the normative, and again, value neutral analysis, according to the normative sort of structure of what people believe in. That's a very terrible thing to say, right? And because you're sort of like kind of in the face of the public, you're undermining the only tool you really have. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a more tactful way to do that. There's a more tactful way of critiquing like Constitution, Linktree fundamentalism, not Linktree, the Originist fundamentalism, and so on and so forth. But, you know, again, the problem is not, I'm not bashing Pine Sap. I'm not even bashing Mehdi Hassan. I'm just saying that I've seen this so many times. And unfortunately, the online world has this sort of like effect on someone's psyche to where the moderate position in your camp is not the moderate position in Toto. Unfortunately. Now, we all know that, like, you know, I'm sufficiently postmodernist to know that, like, the Overton window and what people find acceptable and what ideas that people find reasonable, that's all a social construct, right? Like, the ideas that people found reasonable many decades ago are different, right? And that being said, though, it still is, you know, you can recognize that postmodern reality, that the things that people believe in are constructed. That doesn't mean that there are not real world consequences to said beliefs. And then there's workarounds. There's a way to swim in those waters, right? But to me, I think, and I'm not condemning anybody, but I think the quote unquote debate format is, to me, the worst thing ever. Conversation can do more because conversation implies a sort of like mutual respectability. But with this absolute hideous propagandist, an absolutely hideous, like leftist snake in the grass like Mehdi Hassan, you're never going to find any mutual respect. So the whole exercise is sort of like irrelevant, right? Even though we know that common belief is largely constructed, there is some eternal principles there. But just because something is constructed doesn't, and this is where I think a lot of critics like Jordan Peterson and so forth, and James Lindsay get this wrong about postmodernism. Just because something is a construction, just because something is fluid, does not mean that it's not like quote unquote real in a greater sense, right? And so there's a way to sort of swim against the currents of social moral consensus, but to do so in such a way that's more strategic. And I think the absolute worst way to do it is some stupid, ridiculous gong show, jubilee, whatever podcast where you ring the stupid bell and you're going to give your little hot take. And then Mehdi Hassan's going to hand wave you away as an evil Austrian painter fan. And here comes the next one that's equally as hideous and evil. And it's like Mehdi Hassan can say up there, and the only reason it didn't work with Jordan Peterson is because, let's face it, Jordan Peterson does not have the same, like, you know, cutthroat constitution. He's a very sort of very broken, fragile man, unfortunately, right? But no, I think that I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm doing a sort of value neutral analysis. This is the absolute sloppification of discourse. You know, here's the thing. For me, being totally apolitical in this, I will give a shout out to someone who is a liberal. Brad Tromel, one of the greatest internet art critics. Go to Instagram and go to find Brad Tromel. He has this whole series on the sloppification of the internet. It's brilliant. I love it. I would hope to one day interview Brad Tromel if he's not icked out by, you know, whatever. But no, I think it's brilliant. And to me, I think these podcast networks are obviously doing a massive disservice to any discourse. And so,
well,
sorry,
that's the point.
It's been a long rant. Yeah,
that's the point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
The point is to muddy waters, resurface labels, misdirect, misinform, and get your gotchas. Doesn't matter who you are. That's what it's for, right? And I mean, and while on Twitter, and I did a thread on this earlier this week where I was discussing that, like, listen, Twitter overall has, like, the way the direction it's been, would I argue it's been a relatively overall boom, or a boon, excuse me, BOON, for sort of like these online right-wing spaces? Yeah, absolutely, because it's a lot better than getting banned. But at the same time, not everyone's on Twitter. Is it still one of the most important platforms to be on? Yeah, absolutely, for obvious reasons. Because this is where people who work in like the administration or can hear your points and hear what you have to say, and that's a good thing. Most of the internet is still not like that, and we don't we're not in every space. We're not in every single position of power, as much as I'd like to be sometimes. But it also means that we're always going to be trying to get the attention of those in, say, group chats, right? Like, I've heard it been described to me that the timeline is merely an audition to be added to the chat. And I mean, I will be completely honest with you. I use Twitter mainly as the group chat machine to talk to people I like than I do really to give my takes on things, or I am to shill my channel or my videos or anything that I've written. And that's partially my fault. I could be using the platform way more effectively, like some of my mutuals do. But at the end of the day, like, there is that consequence of this platform encourages us to stay inside our bubbles. And it's very hard sometimes when we have contact with outsiders or those that we would consider, quote unquote, the enemy, and that plays a role into it. And so for me, it's just like, okay, I'm playing a game, but I also know that by playing this game or this particular platform, I'm also being played. And I want to know how I'm being played as best as possible before I all of a sudden, put myself in a particularly dangerous situation or things like that. And also, I think anyone who does truly believe in what they believe in, rather than just to get their yucks in, knows damn well that there comes consequences for this. Whether it's like certain people online who have already been, I don't know, there was someone today, his gentleman's name escapes me, but he was couldn't be allowed to go into California to speak at a conference. We've had plenty of people doxxed, debanked, and it's terrifying that that's sort of the nature of things are. But like, yes, an election does not change the overall state of how bad or how good our current situation politically is, because there is still so much work that needs to be done, and we're still not really amassing any cultural victory, because again, doesn't matter what you believe in or what position that you may hold on any of these guys, or even if you agree with him 100%, right? Like, on the outside world, we're still going to look like creeps. We're still going to be called whatever. And it's important to sort of keep that.
I'm a creep. I'm a weirdo. Yeah.
Billions must die. Like, however the song goes. And like, it sucks.
I've actually never listened to Radiohead. I'm not a Radiohead fan. Maybe I should listen to Radiohead. I don't know.
I have relatively positive feelings about Radiohead. I don't have anything bad really to say off the top of my head. So it's just like, okay, we're all playing this game. And I think we all kind of know that we're playing this game. And that's sort of the way that it's been for a hot minute. And it's just like, okay, cool. But like, it is also strange because the media is so much more bifurcated than it was, say, there's no mainstream press in the sense that like CNN and cable news, and even with the Stephen Colbert shit, like, who watches this stuff? It's older people. It is the person who was watching, Rachel Maddow chant almost this like paraliturgical hymn about the Mueller report day in and day out for like
the
4
Mueller
years,
report,
right? Like, you had the Mueller She Wrote Twitter account and all that jazz. Like that stuff.
Oh man, that terrible. Oh
yeah, but God. I mean, like, okay, so it's usually older white libs in the same way that like the No Kings protest was mainly older white liberals. And it's not like, okay, so older white libs, this is what they believe in. Check, got it. And they're still going to and then even like, millennials now who are in their late 30s, early 40s at this point, like the older ones, like, they're all going to be like, well, if you're a progressive, you're listening to Mehdi Hassan, or you're listening to Pod Save America, or whatever has replaced most of the dirtbag left podcast scene.
What's it called? The Josh Cinderella.
That, or now you're just listening to Hunter Biden bitch. Like, either which way, right? But because there's no,
what's it called? Doom scrolling? Is that what it's called?
I think so. I think that's what it's called.
Let's have Adam Friedman with Bernie Sanders, and let's have I don't know. Let's have Jamie. What's her name? Jamie Lynn Peck.
I'd much rather not. As the old Chris Hitchens.
Let's have Dasha talk about the one-shot thesis.
But I mean, we all run, speaking of one shot, but like we all do run the danger of being one-shotted by our own petard, which is our own
Yeah.
platforms, our own followings. Which, is that a fun thing to admit? Oh, heavens, no, because no one
No,
wants
of
to admit
course
that they're
not.
vulnerable. Because the moment that you admit vulnerability is the moment that you've basically like set yourself up to get screwed over.
Hmm.
And that's always never fun. But like, hey, that's sort of the game that we're playing here. That's really the worst part about all of this is that we are playing in a system that is very much rigged, and
Hmm.
they have no problem rigging it against you because they know that
Yeah.
they can ruin your life still. And this is why I'm saying, like, there is always this intergenerational thing where, like, yeah, the younger guys will tell you, like, oh, you're old, you're washed up, you're not where the energy is. And I'm like, okay, I understand where that is 100% coming from because you want to be the new guy on the
Hmm.
block. You want to be the champion. You want to be top poster, top writer, all eyes on you because there's an ego game involved because it's all kind of market based still. But at the end of the day, maybe learning from those lessons and forming effective coalitions is what people do. This usually leads to sort of that online tribalism where we can all be just turd flinging monkeys at various cages at shooting at one another with shit. But hey, at least you might learn something of like
Well,
what not to post.
radicalism has to be for a purpose. It has to be
Yeah,
directed towards
and
something.
oftentimes radicalism for radicalism's sake can be misguided,
Yeah.
misdirected, and unfortunately very much used against you because they
Well, it
would
can
want
also
nothing
turn
more.
inwards as well. Like it can turn inwards towards a very self-destructive.
Oh yeah.
Not to, like I don't mean this in sort of like
Left-wing
an
radicalism is the best
Antifa.
example of this. How many people have
Yeah.
trooned out?
No, but also like I think on the political right, it can become sort of like a weird, like nihilistic disposition where, and unfortunately, like a lot of like the NRX people have made this mistake where it's like you're talking about power all day, you're talking about sort of like amoralism, but it's like, okay, are you in power? Oh well, Elon Musk met with Curtis Yarvin. It's like, well, that lasted maybe 5 seconds. It's like, you know what I mean? Like talking about power all day when you don't have any power is sort of like, and it's not that it's useless. There's a lot of great things that have come out of NRX, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of great things that I think have come out of even people that I don't morally agree with, such as, everyone knows I'm a Michel Foucault head. There definitely is used to talking about power. But even like, for example, that was another point. And this isn't my point. This was someone else's point about the debate, is that for right or for wrong, there are regimes around the world that exist today that fight for their people, that do commit terrible crimes, and that you wouldn't endorse morally. But to say that, well, there are certain regimes that do fight for the majority of their people, and I want that for me, it's like that's a reasonable argument compared to sort of doing this weirdo kabuki theater where you're going to resurrect certain regimes from the 20th century. Right now, and so I understand, like, I'm not a big fan of the CCP. I'm not a big fan of what their influence on my country and so forth. But I'm not a big fan of how they treat their ethnic minorities either. But at the same time, you can objectively say that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party and the Politburo, that they more or less are, I mean, yes, it's a terrible society to live in a lot of ways, but they more or less fight for the interests of the Han Chinese. That's not a crazy thing to say, right? Not to say I endorse the CCP. Um, Chinese communism is a weird entity because it experienced a lot of different transitions and reformations, like with Dengism, for instance, right? But I think that, I would not prefer that. I do not endorse their influence on my country. I don't endorse the way they do things. But to say that, like, unless you're some kind of like retread Cold Warrior where you're like, well, the communists don't actually fight for the interests of their own people. I mean, okay, fine, whatever, right? But it's like, objectively speaking, there is something there, right? There's other regimes that I think commit terrible crimes and terrible atrocities, but they still have the interests of the majority opinion of their people in that country. Now, you can disagree with that opinion. I can think of one nation committing atrocities right now that have the popular sentiment of most people in that nation that I vehemently disagree with morally of their actions over the past 2 years. But it's like, okay, fine. You know what I mean? I think that's a better argument as a whole. You know what I mean? There are existing countries today that have a sort of majority populace where their leadership, for right or for wrong, does things in the interests of those people. And then you could say to someone like Media Hassan, I much prefer that than sort of like transnational progressivism, which is what Media Hassan is fighting for at the end of the day. Would you agree, Prude? Or
yeah, and I mean,
yeah.
I said that because I was on Orange Show yesterday.
You said this about the stupid Russia game thing.
Well, I said this about the
yeah.
we also covered the Israel news. I had literally I had said, like, you know, I would like Israeli style border control policies for my country. Which I know that sounds kind of radical, but considering how determined they are in lobbying efforts to keep their birth rates up and to be anti-abortion for their people, and
I think in terms of border control, because I wouldn't want to,
I wouldn't go so far on some other things.
Fed post when it comes to other things that they do.
But
I'm not making that comparison.
Certain for border stuff, I'm like, oh, this is not. This is pretty good. I mean, they've got their own problems, but like, I would love to have that for me. And I don't think that's.
I would put it this way. I know I'm gonna like totally moral F-slur here, but like
just a tad.
No, I wouldn't want to commit atrocities against people. Put it that way. I know I sound so embarrassed to say this, but like, I don't endorse committing atrocities against certain, against people.
No, I mean, I don't either.
But in terms of the concept,
it is for the purpose of national defense, and that
the concept of national defense that the Likud party has, apart from like all of the war crimes and the objectively terrible ethnic cleansing that they do. Like, in terms of like the concept of having a secure border and fighting for your people in the abstract, I mean, that's good, right? But I think like, but yeah, go ahead, Peru. I cut you. I'm very sorry.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, there's plenty of things that I can object to, but I think that
right,
wanting to have a strict militarized border control for the sake of preserving my nation and what I claim.
Oh, what about Viktor Orban? Is Orban doing atrocities against his own citizens?
Well, no.
I mean, no. I mean, certain NATO wave people that.
Although with Orban, I'm always curious as to why there's so much American influence in Hungary.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
A lot
of these alt-righters, they went to Hungary.
Well, I mean, why the hell is Rod Dreher there?
Like, Poland. I mean, okay, Poland has a lot of problems.
Poland
they're in bed with the.
Poland's also a major strategic U.S. military ally with respect to NATO.
But in terms of their border, though, I mean, they
I mean, anything that keeps migrants out that are being flown in by various other parties that are trying to instigate national incidences. Yeah, like, no, screw that. I will defend.
But that's my point, though, is that
you can pick others. You can pick others.
Exactly. You can go to someone like Media Hassan and say, your conception that is very popular but is flawed, that if you give someone the authority and power to control the nation's borders, it's like, actually, that's sort of a wrong-headed conception.
Well, it boils down to the same point that has been echoed by everyone and their mother, which has been, at the end of the day, whether they want to say it or not, this boils down to an open ethnic resentment. And it was really funny because Lindy Man, of all people, had called this on the dot. And it threw
I didn't know that. He's blocked.
It threw me for a whirl when he used the phrase. And, pardon me if you find this offensive, anyone in chat, or to our lovely enemies hating us. But like, when Lindy Man, of all people, is using the term brown rage, I'm like, yeah, like that kind of just nails it for me.
That guy was in the New York Times too. It was front cover.
Yeah, and he had other stuff written or published elsewhere. And so it's just like, well, that's pretty, I would argue that's pretty fairly accurate for all intents and purposes, because this boils down to a resentment. Like, there was this account that I did an Insta block on Twitter because it was like PAX India. And it was an account that was like, I'm an Indian living in Canada, which is a province of India. And the first tweet I saw was his pinned tweet where he's like, I think these right-wingers are more friendly to China than I realized. And I'm like, no.
No, not really.
No, not really.
Well, there's some China boos in there. Yeah, there's
sure. But most of them, I think, now are more dyed-in-the-wool socialist leaning than anything else.
Or they're like Yankees.
But it was just like, wow. I was like, you are an enemy. Like, I'm not going to let you follow my account. Are you crazy? But that sort of stuff exists. And it's just like, at the end of the day, they're going to label me whatever. And they're going to say that I'm whatever. And that I'm evil, and that I'm bad.
People. Like, I mean,
no, but I can't. And I also can't fault the
Yeah.
fact that for the last like 70 years, I've lived in the most psyop country on God's green earth. And that this is par for the course of my existence living in the West politically, and to have opinions that are considered not friendly or not acceptable because, they've been told that they're not acceptable, or that they've been told that they're not the right ones to have.
but
And
I
it's
think
like,
when you
I accept that, but it comes at a cost. And I think everyone kind of knows that.
No, I think, like, I mean, even like you could say, like, I would even, like, just to be spicy, if I was on that debate panel, I could say, like, even in India, right? Like with Modi and Hindu nationalism, obviously, like, he's looking out for the interests of the Hindu majority, right? But that being said, like, you know, my personal opinion is that I don't really appreciate the sort of Hindutva regimes in India that have throughout the years saying, well, we can't do anything about the Sikh separatists. We can't do anything about the Khalistanis. How about you go over to Canada or go over to America or go over somewhere else?
Wasn't the policy more or less at this point?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was the policy.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is, the policy is just to dump the problem here.
Yes.
Either in Canada or in the United States.
Yeah, and
like
so
that's certainly the point.
No, like, in terms of my personal,
and that should be met with like sanctions at this point. Like, you want to try that shit? I should just cut, and threaten tariffs and trade and anything else.
I do not want, like, my personal opinion is that when it comes to like Hinduism, I'm well more acquainted because I studied Vedanta in grad school and so forth. But at the same time, it's like, I don't really want ethnic conflict. Is that such a crazy cancelable thing to say?
No,
that I don't like ethnic.
I don't want some other country's ethnic squabbles happening in my country.
And
that's
then
not
there's like
problematic.
There's clearly the Khalistani influence in Canada. There's clearly the Hindutva influence in Canada. I don't agree with any of it. I don't agree with the Chinese influence in Canada. I mean, in certain regards, I don't even agree with a lot. The state's trying to meddle with, Canada. But at the same time, it's like, so I don't really have a dog in the fight, but I just think, like, on a personal level, of course, I'm more acquainted with Hinduism and Vedanta, but I wouldn't, like, endorse Hindutva over the Khalistanis as some play, the way that the Conservative Party is trying to do, or like the leftoids in Canada, where they endorse the Khalistanis over the Hindus because they have no conception of civilization. It's like, it's stupid. It's stupid. It's just, you know what I mean? So I think that foreign influence is obviously real, but it's like,
well, everyone and their mother knows that it's real. And it's just like, if we can't have a reasonable conversation about the fact that, like, yes, there is very real foreign influence in third world conflicts that play out on the streets of my country and yours, then what's the point? What's the point? Like, what is the point? Like, everyone is just like, again, like, I can't stand Vivek Ramaswamy and people like that. Like, your political positions influenced by your own ethnic grievances should not play a role in my nation's politics, period. That's not a controversial thing to say. The same thing with, like, this Omar Fatah thing. Like, people are like, well, it's not because of his ethnicity that he has these politics. And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to call BS on that. Because clearly he knows that he's got a system of white, older, rich liberals that can fund and support him through NGOs and other activist groups. And then all he's got to do is bust the hundreds of thousands, God knows, millions of his people that live in Minneapolis to the polls to support him. Like,
oh, is that the Somalian?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
the
Somalian
guy.
And it's just
that's.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I think, like, on a lesser point. I mean, this may be too sentimentalist, but I think that this is sort of like the problem with the way that globalization has manifested in terms of displaced peoples, and how there's sort of like a race towards this sort of postmodern nowhere land that the Western world has in some ways become. And I think that
for sure
it's a great tragedy. That's, I think that people, in the absence of either being displaced from their homelands or so on and so forth, or through the process of just finding themselves in a different cultural and ethnic and religious context, that it creates a lot of tensions that I think, and a lot of, like, misunderstandings that just, I think, is a tragedy, right? And is, and I think that this is an unfortunate byproduct. I mean, a lot of people on the political right, for obvious reasons, are very justifiably angry at the situation. But I do think that it's in a lot of circumstances it's a tragedy, the way that things have shaped up. And I think that it's just as much a tragedy for them as it is for us in a lot of ways. And so I think that
it would be more
yeah.
tragic for them if they didn't claim to have this asylum or refugee status and then all of a sudden go vacation in the place that
Right.
you claim to have fled from. Like,
Right.
between the rampant amount of fraud, waste, abuse, and I know that sounds like such an old boomer talking point, but like rampant immigration fraud is very real. Rampant visa fraud is very real. You can watch people give tutorials on how to commit immigration fraud on Twitter and YouTube right now for various H-1B things and things like that.
There are even normie YouTubers that aren't very political in Canada that have exposed this like work visa fraud.
Yeah.
Like, and they're not even particularly conservative or right wing. They're like economic YouTubers, they're like finance guys that have broken it down. I mean, not knowing the political side of it, but yes, you get my point. Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I don't know what the numbers are, and I will need to do research before someone actually's me or provides a lengthy response in chat or on Twitter thread or whatever. But like, I guarantee you, for every one actual displaced refugee victim or persecuted asylum seeker, there's probably like 1 million people that shouldn't be here or that have taken advantage of the system. I'm sure that's not the exact number, but like, it certainly
feels in Europe,
feels that
especially.
way.
Yeah, in Europe, especially.
Well, in America too. Like, come on, like most of these people
in America.
Here, our focus on chain migration and things like that has been an absolute disaster. Like, what are we doing? Like, it just feels like we have done nothing but allowed the world to dominate or to tell us who we are. And that comes down to a lot of other people too. Speaking of like foreign influence, it's just like blatant outsiders telling you time in and time out, well, this is what you people are actually like. And I'm like, you don't know me. Like, you got here 5 minutes ago and you're here to lecture me on who I am or what my people are? No, like, this is where the Sam Hyde in me comes out, where it's like, no, I'm just going to call you a slur at this point because this is ridiculous. You have no right to tell me, oh, this is what you people are like. And I'm like, no, you don't. But unfortunately, as the case has been for, years at this point, there is no civility. And it's going to be the same smug look of superiority that had come from both sides. They're going to respectively return to their camps and say, well, we owned that guy and we did this and we're so cool. And most people's minds will not be changed. And this is the curse of democracy, that we have to play out this kabuki theater to somehow change hearts and minds when everyone kind of knows in their guts what they are. Because we see this in polling too, where people will say, well, we think this is good, or we like this, or we think that this is just fine. But everyone's revealed preferences show when they want to go to places that are safer, less diverse, has higher areas of social trust. So you can say whatever you want about like X, Y, and Z issues regarding diversity or immigration or history or identity.
True.
Like, at the end of the day, I know where your zip code is. Like, come on, man. Like, we know what we're playing here. And that's how it's going to be. And it's frustrating.
Anyway, see super chats.
Yeah, send Gio money.
Please, come on. I have a deal. I have a 3-for-1 special. My usual film review fee is $100. If I get $100, I will. I mean, I'm kind of regretting this because like there's certain, there's people on the E-Rate that have already reviewed this, but like, I will review all 3 films of the 28 Days Later franchise. So 3 for the price of 1.
He really wants to talk about Danny Boyle.
I just need those super chats, and I prefer Entropy, of course, and I have PayPal linked down below. And all that good jazz. So, anyways,
so what do people do with all this? They get burnt out.
Yeah,
like, I mean, how many people come and go? But no, I know.
It's funny. You know what's funny is that even Byung-Chul Han has like a critique of globalization from that lens, and he's like a total boomer. He's like, he doesn't realize he's like saying like this right wing thing, and it's like he doesn't care, Like,
but it's just like where's the lie?
Yeah, it's like, where's the
It's just like, like we're all burnt out because, and this is why I always reference that like 76 McLuhan interview where this guy's just like, well, the global village, and he's like, well, McLuhan is like, well, what the hell did you think that meant? Like, the more we get to know each other, the more we hate each other, and it's very apparent. Like, wow, who would have guessed? Like, we all hate each other, and that's kind of tragic. But the closer we get to one another, familiarity breeds contempt. for better and for worse. And we're left with the shit show that we've unfortunately inherited from decades of policy beyond our control.
Yep. But TLDR, debates are useless. They'll never hold a candle to conversation. And you got to learn not to spill your spaghetti. Actually try to read primary sources. Don't just rely on infographics on 4chan or group chat memes. Just, for the love of God, please do better. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to single out anybody. I'm not even singling out Pine Sap or whoever. Just people who are dissidents as a whole, please. It's like, you know what's funny is I've learned that lesson the hard way. So,
you're not alone. We all have.
Yeah. But there's something I remember. I believe someone on Substack said that, like, a lot of people on the E-Right, they'll immediately go to like based literature, quote unquote, and they'll like read, they'll read like Schmidt and they'll read Yukio Mishima, or they'll read like I don't know, they'll read like Nietzsche. I mean, a lot of people on all sides of the political spectrum read Nietzsche very badly, but they won't read like foundational texts. Like they won't go to like the Socratics or pre-Socratics or Aristotle. And it's like, I think that there is a sort of thing there. And I think that I'm not just singling out the E-Right. I think people that are like discussing things on the internet in general, there is something to be said. Now, there's a lot of great things when it comes to autodidacts, but there's a lot of downsides. And I think if you're not willing to read foundational things, then, I think that it does a disservice to your community in a lot of ways. And I'm not singling anybody out. I mean, there's people that are on the political left who do this. Like they'll read Hakeem Bey or whoever, and they won't read Kropotkin. Or they'll read Kropotkin, and they won't read Marx and Engels.
Or even better, it's just like, what are we reading here? We're just reading the Wikipedia page.
Yeah,
like the amount of political illiteracy, and again, I know this sounds like, oh, the media literacy bro is speaking, but it's just like, okay, do we have or do we not have in our current environment, at least politically speaking, are we not in an age where most people are going to read a graphic or they're going to read a talking point that they found online, and they're going to assume that has the full intents of why they want to say that or use it, and I think that kind of politicking is very homeopathic, because like you get this like little snippet of an idea, a little snippet, a little piece, and all of a sudden you're well read, you're based, you're so cool, we know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. And I mean, like, Destiny's a really good example of this. It's just like, oh, like, well, do you have a source for that? And I'm
Benelli.
Like, but Mr. Benelli, you're reading a Wikipedia page. And Wikipedia's got a policy of like no primary sources, it's all secondary shit. You want to read something about the New Testament in Wikipedia? Guess who's going to be there in the Works Cited page? It's fucking Bart Ehrman, well-renowned atheist New Testament scholar. Like, are you going to read anything by, I don't know, Irenaeus? Fuck no. Like, come on. It's all going to be secondhand shit. And
I'm not going to read Hecate. I'm going to watch an Gnostic Informant video.
I'm going to watch an explaining philosophy. I'm going to watch a CPG Gray video on this issue. And like, that's become where it is, where it's like masters of all trades, jack of all trades, master of none. But however, what we're really jacking is just like, I don't know, a puddle deep of Wikipedia or an article there, which is why I have a lot of respect for the autodidacts out there, whether it's Athenian or Spurgler or anyone in our sphere, because it's like, you know how much fucking time it takes to actually read all that and to be somewhat technically literate on any issue? Good God, it's nuts. Because you're required now to do a boatload of work on things that you are going to spend the rest of your life reading about. There are people who make their whole careers off one philosopher. So it's like, we're not experts on anything, but because
academics
we live,
do this,
and it's just like, and even when Dimes and I do you even read? It's just like, we covered Christianity and classical culture. I like went on a rabbit hole for like a week after the second episode where I was just going through all of Cochrane's like bibliography, and I was like, man, some of this is really good. And of course, my Latin is like rough as shit, but I'm like, well, cool, I can read some of this stuff. This is really interesting. And I was reading more about Julian the Apostate, some of the laws that he'd put out, some of his writings, and I just like, this was great, and this is amazing. Like, it's cool to actually witness all this, but like, it's like, oh damn. At the same time, I'm like, I got to do the show. I got to finish recording this. I got to edit this. I got to pick a fucking venue for my fucking wedding reception. Like, all these like real life things sort of stack on top, and you're like, yeah, it would be nice to have tenure track, but we got rid of all those things now, didn't we? Because now everyone's an associate professor at some college or university. So again, it just the burnout is real online, and it's really funny.
A lot of people took offense to me bashing 4chan infographics. I'm not bashing 4chan infographics. They do have their place, but it's like
they do. But also, there is just the sort of general promotion of like, here's the stat, and also like, but you see this with lefties too, like where they'll cite a study or what was the best one when Pascal Emmanuel Gobry had the whole meme about like conservatives and liberals and how they rank things of importance, like the family versus the alien. And the libs were like, that's not what the study says. And it's just like, oh, now we want to do some research. Now we want to read things. And it's like, guys, we already know that you're xenophiles. Like, this isn't like rocket science. It's just a good meme. But again, the meme is charged in the same way that like, if you were to explain to like a random person on the street, hey, what do you think the woke more correct than the mainstream means? And they'll probably give you an answer of whatever the hell they think that means, not knowing that that's like from Covfefe-Anon and that it's a right-wing talking point about how the progressives actually analyze reality better than the liberal masquerade of equality or whatever. And it's just like, like that's pretty interesting.
There was a tweet where someone said that not watching some like show meant for like little babies when you're like a grown adult is fascist, and I'm like, yes,
wasn't this the didn't the fucking Atlantic write an article where they're like Paw Patrol's fascist?
Yeah, but this was
is fascist.
No, but this person was saying that watching a kid show when like people that say you shouldn't watch a kid show like meant for like little babies as an adult is wrong. That like, oh, that's actually a fascist assumption. It's like, well, more correct. If you believe that there's like a sort of inherent separation between the self as a grown adult and the self as a young child, I guess that's fascist. It's like it's a very weird like woke more correct sort of thing where I don't know, it's like I thought it was a funny tweet, but
well, yeah, and they'll be like, wow, how dare you assume that growing up and being mature that's fascism, bro? And it's just like, really?
I forget what show it was. It was like Tiger something.
I don't know.
Tiger Dan, Tiger.
Oh, it's like people calling Bluey fascist.
It's Bluey fascist.
Oh, I saw.
Oh, that's right. It's propaganda. It's Bluey is propaganda. Is that the cop one?
No, that's Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol is
propaganda. Yeah. No, not Tiger King. It wasn't Tiger King.
Oh man.
Whatever happened to
a couple of months ago, back in my old job, I actually drove by his ranch.
Whoa!
When I was driving up to a conference, and my coworker was like, "Yep, this is where all that shit is." And he's like, "Turns out they're not all like there are other like apparently other breeders in the area for tigers or whatever. Like sometimes they get out. We got to call the highway patrol." And I'm like, that's wild.
That's terrible.
He lived in that area when he grew up, and he's just like, yeah, all that shit's real. And I'm like, that's both
Daniel
really
Tiger.
Cool, but really, really terrifying. Imagine just being like, I don't know, like a crackhead in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden there's a fucking tiger. Terrifying shit. Think about out loud.
Gio Tiger Pen. That's like Tiger Williams, one of the greatest enforcers the Toronto Maple Leafs ever had. Tiger Williams. They should make a kid show
you want to throw back to one of our older episodes of the show. What did we call it? The Atlanta Slashers or whatever.
The Atlanta Thrashers.
The all black soccer hockey team.
And they're all enforcers.
They're all enforcers. They're all goons.
They're all Ryan Reeves. Yeah. Even the goaltender is an enforcer. There's actually I shouldn't say it. There have been goaltenders who were enforcers. Like Ron Hextall,
what a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive, yeah. Black Ice, the Atlanta Thrashers.
Thank you. I know someone made an AI generated like trailer for that. I think it would be if Netflix wants to do another race swapped sports story, let me write it. And I just want to.
And then Dwayne the Rock Johnson would
I just
be the coach.
call it call it Goon 3, the Atlanta Thrasher story, where what's his name? What's the guy who played the Goon in the first 2 movies? Like he play Stifler in American Pie?
Yes, he was Stifler. Yeah.
Yeah, the one like actual white guy in that cast. And just have him be like, hey, I bought this old franchise. I'm gonna try and make it something. And you can even have it like Glory Road with Don Haskins, where like the Goon is like interviewing all of these like black hockey players who don't know shit, but they know how to beat the crap out of people because they're all raised on the streets of Atlanta.
You're gonna get them from the minor leagues.
Yeah, and you're gonna get them from the minor leagues. You're gonna get them from like intramural hockey, like University of Georgia. And then all of a sudden, just one guy gets hip checked, and then the moose is loose on the field, and their sporting anthem is interrupted at the beginning with a chirp. Like, it's
they
perfect.
bring back
Netflix. Call me. I will write the script in a week.
They bring back the bench clearing brawl. Like
they do. They do. And
they don't do that anymore. You'll get
can make a cameo. It'll be great.
Didn't we say like the goaltender is going to be Kevin Hart?
Yes. For obvious reasons. Because all comedies involving black people these days require Kevin Hart's presence. I think he's contractually obligated to be the short black king in all comedies. It's in his contract.
I actually watched with my mother a good film he was in about this billionaire that was like paralyzed, and he was his helper. It was actually a pretty good movie. It was with the guy that was Malcolm in the Middle. What's the guy's name? The father. He was also in Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Why does his name escape me off the top of my head?
What's his name?
See, we just spent all this time talking about Goldfish Memory, and my brain is just like, who is this actor?
He was Walter White, and he was also the dad in Malcolm in the Middle. I never watched Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston, yeah. The first time I ever saw Bryan Cranston was he was in I guess you'd call it a Monster of the Week episode of the X-Files, where he was in a car and he had to constantly keep speeding, or something.
Oh, that one! To him.
Yeah.
That was a Hitchcock film, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I did recently watch a Hitchcock film not too long ago. I watched The Man Who Knew Too Much, and it's still a really good movie.
Yeah, it was a remake of an original
I like most
French
Hitchcock
film.
films, though. So.
Yeah, but this one was a remake of an original French film. Yeah.
Ah.
Anyways, let's go to Burnout Society. See those super chats. I still
give you money.
Reviewing all.
He will be begging. Don't make him beg.
If you're interested in me reviewing all 3 films of of the 28 Days Later series, I'm actually kind of trepidatious because a lot of like right-wing film reviewers have a very negative opinion of it. But I wonder if should I just not care and do
how do I theory sell the shit out of this?
No, but that's what I mean. Like, should I just stick to a value neutral analysis and save the politics for other people, or should I?
You're your own man, Gio.
No, what would you do, Prue?
I'm not your dad. Like, come on, man.
Just as a hypothetical.
As a hypothetical, I guess if I had the opportunity, if someone paid me to go review a film, I would probably insert my own opinion. Like that's just probably a guaranteed. But
my problem is I have a positive opinion of all things.
Is that a bad thing? Give your defense. Speak your mind.
You're right.
You don't have to be conforming. People come for your takes, Gio. They don't come for you to just sit there.
It's just that 28 Days Later was such a foundational film to me as a kid, and
I
know the clear subtext. I've watched the Wyatt Stog film review. I think it was a very good review. I think maybe certain points I disagree with, though.
And that's okay.
So
you can say why.
I respectfully disagree, and I know that my childhood nostalgia is speaking. So keep in mind that's
as long as you're reflexive about it, then that's kind of what matters.
I thought that 28 years later, the recent one was. I mean, it did move me to tears. I mean, I got to say, and I know, in Britain, it's a very contentious issue. Let's say their own made issue, if you will. And I know that's probably propaganda that's playing.
Well, that and the obvious reference to a known molester at the end.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
That was so out of left field. I was like, I literally turned to my friend and I was like, did they really just do that? And I know that sounds very soy-lennial to say out loud, but it's like, come on, really?
Yeah.
Out of all the things in this post-apocalyptic environment that we're going to give a statement at the end about.
But is it him condemning it, or is he just like pointing out to like the cult-like nature of the power structure in the UK?
Just, I don't, I'd have to rewatch the movie.
Like Danny Boyle, like the one thing I'll say, if someone does pay me to review all 3 films, I will give a warning. Danny Boyle has a very, very, very disturbing relationship towards depicting, let's call them little people, in his productions. If we recall the opening of, what was it, the 2012 Olympic Games in the UK? That was terrifying. That was like, that raised a few questions. So as much as I love the films, as much as I love Danny Boyle as a filmmaker and Alex Garland as a screenplay writer, I am well aware of the very subversive messages that are in there. But I think that you can appreciate a work of art to where it's like, I think like a lot of people on the online right, they sort of like don't, like they're not looking at, they're just looking for the political hot take. And I think you have to like sort of let your mind drift away of that and just appreciate the work of art for what it is, right? But then there's like other things where people like totally misunderstand you. Like today, there was some like some slop, and you could really tell this was like one of these like slop accounts, had 100,000 likes. It was this Japanese painter that did these like literal photorealistic
the
paintings.
Hyper photorealistic. Yeah. Someone compared it to the Mona Lisa, and I was like, it's not.
It's just like,
it's really not.
And then someone, although it clarified he was not making a point against me, but he was like, a lot of people on the political right, they think like, well, all these like modern art, they think realism is bad. Like, well, what about my certain favorite regime in the mid-century? It's like, no, when you have to think about it, like a lot of the art that like, and then again, value neutral analysis, I'm not supporting any of these regimes or anything. But a lot of the art that was produced by right-wing regimes or by right-wing people, they weren't exactly like this equation. It's a very flawed equation to equate similitude to the real with tradition. Because the old masters, they were painting things that were very complex, that in some ways can never be replicated, but they weren't painting things with the lens of, I want to make this akin to the real. They were painting something else because the work of art, the painting itself, is a wholly different reality and object from the reality that we experience in the everyday. And to cross those two bridges would be alien to the old masters, right? And that's why I largely agree with my frenemy Paul Talk, where he says that people like in the 19th century academicists like Bouguereau, they sort of misunderstood what that tradition was because they predicated technical skill over what they were actually trying to get at with that technical skill. And even regimes that, I may not endorse on the political right, it's like they were trying to find a sort of fabulation of the real. From, for example, a certain sculptor that was employed by a certain regime, you're not going to find photorealism there. You're going to find a personification of life in a martial society.
You're talking about Brecker?
I'm talking about Arnold Brecker. Okay. And not to say I endorse, I'm just saying value neutral analysis, or the Italian futurists. They weren't trying to depict the reality of the way that we see a photograph of a machine engine. They were depicting the vitality of the force and of the experience of that sort of reality of that machine or of that plane or of that parachuter or whatever. And so I think the problem is that a lot of people do have this equation between like the similitude to a real object, that being traditional. If you really want to go like the whole, like the farther something back is, the more traditional it is. Well, abstraction, as we know it, is pretty traditional. It's in the caves of Glasgow's. You know what I mean? Like you would consider them abstract in that they do not depict a three-dimensional space. They depict a two-dimensional space that is symbolic, right? And so abstraction actually is kind of traditional. Not to say that it's like traditional in the sense of like being quote unquote trad, But I did a video on this called Vulgar Tradism. You could look it up. I did this many years ago, 4 years ago. But
I
I'm
don't even
just
know if I
saying,
could call the Lasso cave paintings that are like allegedly at 35,000 plus years old, or maybe less than that. I don't know, but it's like tens of thousands of years old, and be like, that's expressionism in the context of like the modern sense of that word.
no, of course not. But it
It's
was
just, okay.
It was a direct
I'm clarifying because I'm like, that's an interesting comparison. I'm just,
well, I mean,
there's like a couple of millennia of time apart.
But it's funny how like the expressionists returned to that, in the sense that they were,
well, it's very primal.
Exactly, the cave painters were like a direct sensuous experience with the reality that they were inhabiting, which was spiritualized. And I think like that's what there's a lot of great scholarship and literature about like certain expressionists like Munch, Gauguin. Again, I'm not endorsing Gauguin's personal life, but certainly even to extent Picasso. Although I think Picasso later sold out to a lot of his pretensions about himself, and a lot of pretensions about his ideology, and the pretensions of Picasso qua Picasso. But I think that there was a point in Picasso's career when he really did get it, But I think like he did become sort of like, I agree with Robert Hughes. He did become like a weird self-parody of himself. The way that I hate to say it, as much as I love and appreciate and respect the man, I think Andy Warhol to an extent did kind of like play into a self-parody, because Andy Warhol, if nothing else, and you could go back to my interview with Mr. D, if nothing else, Andy Warhol, you want to talk about the Burnout Society and the sort of society of the spectacle. Andy Warhol, unlike anybody else, unlike any egghead in academia, understood what life was like in the society of the spectacle, more than I think even Debord. And so Andy Warhol was the man of the spectacle. But anyways, the Burnout Society. So, oh my God. That's been a long rant. So, do you have a copy, Prude, or should I?
I don't. So if you have it on screen, sir, please put it up.
I just have the book.
Well, read away, buddy. This is going to be you.
Oh my God. In a very cryptic way, Prometheus, Kafka undertakes a few modifications of the Greek legend. He's reworking reads, the gods grew weary, the eagles grew weary, the wound closed wearily. I would subject Kafka's version to further revision and turn it into an intrapsychic scene. The contemporary achievement subject inflicts violence on and wages war with oneself, itself. As everyone knows, Prometheus also brought work to mankind when he gave mortals the gift of fire. Today's achievement subject deems himself free when in fact he is bound like Prometheus, or the subject is bound like Prometheus. The eagle that consumes the ever-regrowing liver can be interpreted as the subject's alter ego. Viewed in this way, the relationship between Prometheus and the eagle represents a relation of self-exploitation. Pain of the liver, an organ that cannot actually experience pain, is said to be tiredness. Prometheus, the subject of self-exploitation, has been seized by overwhelming fatigue. For all that Kafka envisions a healing tiredness, the wound closes wearily. It stands opposed to the I tiredness, whereby the ego grows exhausted and wears itself down. Such tiredness stems from the redundancy and recurrence of the ego. But another kind of tiredness exists too. Here the ego abandons itself into the world. And he used the German translation. It is tiredness at the most of less, it is tiredness as more of less of me. Healthily tiredness that trusts in the world. I tiredness, and again, he's getting this from Heidegger, as solitary tiredness is worldless and world-destroying. It annihilates all references to the other in favor of the narcissistic self-reference. The psyche of today's achievement subject differs from the psyche of the disciplinary subject. Again, that's the Foucauldian example. The ego, as Freud defines it, is a well-known disciplinary subject. Freud's psychic apparatus is a repressive apparatus with commands and prohibitions of the superego that subject and repress. Like disciplinary societies, the psychic apparatus sets up walls, thresholds, borders and guards. For this reason, Freudian psychoanalysis is only possible in repressive societies that found their organization on the negativity of prohibitions and commandments. And of course, Freud, famous critic of Christianity and so forth. Contemporary society, however, is a society of achievement. Increasingly, it is the shedding of the negativity of prohibitions and commandments and presenting itself as a society of freedom. The modal verb that determines achievement society is not the Freudian should, but can. This social transformation entails intrapsychic restructuring. The late modern achievement subject possesses an entirely different psyche than the obedient subject from whom Freud conceived psychoanalysis for. Freud's psychoanalytic apparatus is dominated by negation, repression, and fear of transgression. The ego is a seat of anxiety. In contrast, the late modern achievement subject is poor in negation. It is a subject of affirmation, where the unconscious necessarily connected to the negativity of negation and repression, then the late modern achievement subject would no longer have an unconscious. It would be a post-Freudian ego. The Freudian unconscious is not a formation that exists outside of time. It is a product of disciplinary society, dominated by the negativity of prohibitions and repression that have long since left behind. The work performed by the Freudian ego involved the fulfillment of duty above all. On this score, it shares a feature with the Kantian obedient subject. For Kant, the conscious occupies the position of the superego. Kant's moral subject is subject to power. So then he quotes Kant, every man has a conscience and finds himself observed, threatened, and in general kept in awe, respect coupled with fear, by an internal judgment. And this authority, watching over the law in him, is not something that he himself voluntarily makes, but something incorporated into his being. The Kantian subject, like the Freudian subject, is eternally divided. It acts on the behest of another, or the grand other. However, this other is also part of itself. Now this original intellectual essence is thought of duty. Moral predisposition called conscience is particular in that, although in business is a business of man with himself, one constrained by his reason sees himself constrained to carry it as at the bidding of another person. That's what Kant said. On the basis of this split, Kant speaks of a doubled self or dual personality. The moral subject is simultaneously defendant and judge. The obedient subject is not a subject of desire or pleasure, but a subject of duty. Thus, the Kantian subject pursues the work of duty and represses its inclinations. Hereby, God, that omnipotent moral being, does not appear only as the instance of pure punishment and condemnation, but also, and this is a very important fact, which seldom receives this attention, as the instance of gratification. As the subject of duty, the moral subject represses all pleasures, inclinations in favor of virtue. God, who epitomizes morality, rewards such painfully performed labors with happiness. Happiness is distributed in exact proportion morally. The moral subject which accepts pain for morality may be entirely certain of gratification. There is no threat of a crisis of gratification occurring, for God does not deceive. He is trustworthy. And before we move on, do you have any comments about Prude?
I can definitely see the critique / influence of Kant and that of Deleuze and Guattari for sure. I'm thinking about that desire to produce in that Kantian quotation. I'm like, okay, I see where things are coming from. I need to reread. And again, this goes back to what we said earlier. We really need to reread the classics. I've got like 2 books on Kant in my library that I need to go back and definitely reread. But no, I see I see the framework that's being laid out here. What do you have to add?
Well, I think that it's definitely a major theme throughout a lot of works by Byung-Chul Han is that he really does take the sort of critique of someone like Erich Fromm about like in Escape from Freedom, that we are condemned to our own freedom existentially, or rather we are condemned to sort of like that postmodern nowhere land where affirmation and positivity actually work against us. in the sense that we have a lack of moral order, we have a lack of sense of purpose or identity of self, but at the same time, we are constantly besieged by these key performance indicators that are told lead to a flourishing life, but a flourishing life that's on our own terms. So he's saying, what's more insidious? An authoritarian society that tells you what to do, medieval Christendom, or religious mandate, or actually imposing this order on yourself that doesn't really lead to, and he makes this distinction in other works as well, doesn't really lead to flourishing, but leads to much more of the same. Just like endless like performativity, or like sort of endless consumption, or like sort of the way that you can refine such things, even like making things such as happiness a game that you then play with other people, but then you play it to yourself, because as Byung-Chul Han notes, the other is sort of extinguished, right? And so much as what we're saying in the first half of this podcast, when you negate the other, you are left with a similitude of yourself. And this is very dangerous for common public discourse. Because for right or for wrong, Byung-Chul Han still believes in the power of what Habermas would call communicative rationality, right? The obliteration of the other in all things, for just endless self-mortification and performance. Even when we pleasure ourselves, we are pleasure maxing, right? The internet parlance. You want to talk about internet parlance? What is maxing? Pleasure maxing, looks maxing. In other words, you are turning this performance, you are turning this ability of self-mortification into something that historically, by definition, is not really something that you would consider a duty or work or a slog, but rather is something that you do for pleasure or self-fulfillment. But those things, there's no longer any leisure. There's no longer leisure in the classic sense. You are leisure maxing. I am drip maxing with my amazing fashion sense, style, or whatever, right? In other words, you are turning this mechanism of online fabulation into another pursuit of something that by definition was not meant to be like a pursuit of like pure utilitarian grunt work, right? It's like, I am maxing something. It's like, in so other words, it's a form of self-exploitation, which is way more insidious. And it's like, and there's a long development there that Byung-Chul Han talks about. But here, so if you wanted to add to something.
Oh, I mean, the utility maxing thing, I think, comes to my mind, because like the consequence of like constantly being reaffirmed that you're free, I think, has broken most people, because by saying that, you've essentially devoided any purpose that anyone could have had by being told what to do. Because most people, I think history kind of proves this, as much as we want to like deny it, or people don't like great man or whatever. But like, even like the autodidact thing, like that is, you have to be an incredibly well-disciplined person to do that. And you have to have the ability to actually force yourself to do it, or to look at your competitors and also realize that you have to be like them or learn from them and to do that. Most people aren't like that, because we've given people freedom. And what are most people doing? Well, they're fucking door dashing and doing buy now, pay later and things like that. Like the liberation of a person in their own will with any, now that's like, okay, well, you don't have to mortify your flesh. You don't have to fast because of material conditions and because you're not religiously obligated to fast or whatever. All those things simply come in mind to say, well, now what are you doing? Well, you've turned into the depressed person. You have become chained to your own senses. And people know this, because those that are powerful or are Machiavellian recognize innately that there is the lack of mortification of the flesh or your mind or being disciplined functionally has allowed you to be re-enslaved to another order.
Exactly.
Right? Like, I mean, and you can say what you will about the fandomification of news. We did a whole episode on that, like, I don't know, a year ago at this point. But what does it reify to us? It reifies the need for authority, and it reifies we must have a hermeneutical lens to examine the world around us. And that tells us that we still require some authority figure to do it. And so when people are quote unquote freed, your mind, whether you want to take a Freudian model and approach or different forms of analysis, like Well, everyone now has all of a sudden just been one-shotted. And I know that that meme's been played to death, but it's, I think, kind of important to reiterate in this sense, because most people do not have the capability of being the sort of well-disciplined, well-to-do kind of society, in part because we've totally just destroyed that from our own psyche. Like we don't engage in a way where those kind of politics or that kind of socialization has been treated as a net good or positive for society. And so by doing that, or by acknowledging that, now all of a sudden people are trying to make sense of, well, what do we do now? And there's this like strange, I say, post-coital haze. I hate to say after the orgy, but like there is this sort of very strange, like we have this like bacchanalian feast, and then everyone's sort of coming out of it. We're experiencing the petite mort of society, because now everyone realizes, oh, something is dead. And I think everyone kind of acknowledges that deadness. And if you want to look at it in a Spenglerian sense, well, what do you do when you recognize that deadness? Well, you engage in a period of second religiousness. Yes. And I think that you can see that on all fronts, whether it's Christianity that's more conservative, this like flee to paganism, this move to sort of this like Nietzschean rationality. And for some people, that means being so rational that you're willing to write a retarded article about how it's okay to kill a human over X number of million shrimp. And the only answer you can really say to that is like, krill yourself.
Or you can write something like it's cringe, and it's it's the world is to care about, certain regimes redacting, little people. But again, like it's performative, because again, if you're performing this sort of like sense of identification with something that was initially a pursuit of leisure. And so the essay before the Burnout Society essay is on tiredness. Tiredness that is so deep in modern society because it's fatigue from things not that we hate, like the drudgery of labor, being in a authoritarian society that dictates what you do, right? I actually recorded the Warhammer 40K review of Hell's Reach with Paz, and he was talking about people in the Warhammer 40K universe that are in these mega cities, these the hive cities. It's like, okay, you're born as a steel melter. That is your purpose in life. You will do it until you drop. It's like, that's it. No, this is not what we're talking about. Byung-Chul Han is talking about an even more terrible and insidious fatigue, which is the fatigue from something that you love, which is terrible, right? Like, it's like that that guy, he's kind of jacked, he's bald, he's like a Twitch streamer, he plays video games, and he like spills food on himself. What's that guy's name?
I couldn't tell you. I don't watch
in the chat. These guys in the chat probably know. He was saying like how his life is so regimented, just playing video games. He barely has time for his girlfriend. He barely has time to work out. He eats on stream to efficiency max him playing video games. Tyler won. I think it's Tyler won. The guy, the bald, the cropped hair, and he's kind of jacked, and he like spills spaghetti on his thing. He's like, yeah, man, it's terrible. And I think Byung-Chul Han actually mentioned Twitch streamers in one of his more recent books. But another thing I'll add is that I'll give you a brilliant example. I saw someone tweet the other day, this was a few weeks ago, about why are even Zoomers that were barely alive when this was a thing, why do people have this intense nostalgia for Blockbuster, right? Because Blockbuster represents the comfort of limitations. And of course, I quote you with a picture of Byung-Chul Han with like the speech bubble, right? Mm-hmm. It's a love for limitation in a world of infinite choice, because infinite choice is a burden. It is not the freedom of content. It is the destruction and implosion of content. This is what Byung-Chul Han means by fatigue, a deep fatigue. And when people say that, oh man, it's going to be great when AI can do a whole movie that you can think up of on your own. I mean, the vast majority of people are going to just make goon material. But imagine that. Imagine like, imagine Borjas's infinite library. Where AI is going to create Borjas's infinite blockbuster, where you have an infinite amount of versions of one single film, but like a little tiny thing has changed. including like the color of a shirt or the color of a coffee table or a phrase that just doesn't mean anything. And so what happened in Borges's Infinite Library? The librarians were driven to sun-setting despair because the encounter with the infinite leads not to liberation. It leads to the destruction of something itself. Because imagine if you could just think of a movie and it plays. I mean, yeah, that would be cool. That would be awesome, right? But then you can share it. And there's independent content creators that make things that are way better than what Hollywood can produce. But if everyone had that ability, you would have nothing. The actual act of watching a film as a work of art would cease to exist in a weird way. Because if I can just come up with my own film, then who cares? I mean, it's probably just going to be goo material anyways for most people. But you are driving something to infinite exhaustion, which is far worse than just banning something, right? For whatever you want to say about authoritarian regimes, banning literature, banning books, Fahrenheit 451?
Yes,
Yeah. It's like, no, the actual hell is the Lotus Eaters on in Brave New World that have access to a sort of digital nowhere land of infinite content. That is how you destroy art. That is how you destroy literature, not just by banning something, right? In fact, banning something is probably a mercy because it gives a work of art a sort of mystique that is transgressive, right? And so just letting people do an infinite amount of content, there would be no need for anything anymore. Now, I think a fringe benefit would be the destruction of Hollywood. That would be an amazing thing. But to destroy the artwork, to destroy the actual medium of art that is film would be, I think, a travesty. Now, there's a lot of things that get greenlit that are terrible slop, but there's a lot of things that aren't. There's a lot of things that take years of dedication of a director, of stage plays, of so forth. There's a lot of things that go into making a classic film that takes years and decades to really perfect. But if, a press of a button, I can imagine, I don't know, what would be a stupid example? What if in 28 Days Later, Jim was some Giga Chad and he like single-handedly Snake Plisskened all the infected, something stupid.
I was about to say, just imagine 28 Days Later, but with marbled tier dialogue.
Yeah, or like Snake Plissken. Imagine that. That would be nice, actually. I would actually enjoy that one. But no, anyways, let's move on. So this is the kicker of what Byung-Chun is saying right in the third page. So he's going over a critique of the Freudian and Kantian model that was within the Western mind for millennia. Now we have something wholly different. We live in a post-Kantian and post-Freudian world in a weird way. The late modern achievement subject does not pursue works of duty. Its maxims are not obedience, law, or the fulfillment of obligation, but rather freedom, pleasure, and inclination. Above all, it expects the profits of enjoyment from work. It works for pleasure and does not act as the behest of the other. Instead, it hearkens mainly to itself. After all, it must be self-starting, and it must be a self-starting entrepreneur in the way it rids itself of the negativity of the commanding other. However, such freedom from the other is not just emancipating and liberating. The dialectic of freedom means developing new constraints. Freedom from the other switches into narcissistic self-relation, which occasions many of the psychic disturbances afflicting today's achievement subject. Now, I know this comes off as very boomerish, very like, iPad baby, turn off your phone, but there obviously is something to it. So, let's.
Well, I don't think you need to even look at
ahead.
it like iPad baby or even like the Venezuela iPhone meme or whatever. Like, you don't need to reduce it to something so bare bones. I think that
or like
the best
nugget posting. Remember?
Oh
Nuggets?
yeah, I do remember nugget posting. Which is terrifying that I even know what you're referencing sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely feel like I'm it's my own self-judgment where I'm like, I'm on the internet too much because I remember these things.
Who's that guy that gambles on and he like loses millions of dollars and they're gonna sue him? The state's gonna sue him.
I don't know.
Jack, whatever, Mr. Jack.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he's like a Twitch streamer that like he gambles millions of dollars and people love it when
was that the same guy? I saw a clip. I don't know if it's the same gentleman, but this was a guy who I think had like a VR setup on his person, and he gets a ticket or whatever, and he's like, hold on real quick, and he like, I guess
gambles, Jack. Yeah,
and he gambles and he wins like $600 off blackjack, and he's like, okay, officer, I'm fine. And they're like, because he has enough money now to pay the ticket because he like just won $600.
Yeah,
and I think to myself, good, like that's insane. Like that's what's being promoted here.
Walking around with the VR headset reminds me of that scene in Lane. Remember, like the pervert in Lane?
Yeah,
where he's like walking around with the wire.
I saw a great meme the other day where it was the "Are you winning, son?" meme, and it was like showing the daughter holding a cat, and in the shadow it looks like she's pregnant. And then on the other panel, it was like, "Are you winning, son?" And it's a guy having VR sex with his waifu or whatever.
Oh my god!
Clearly just like gooned out of his mind. And I'm like, yeah, it feels about right. But also, I don't know. There's nothing about that kind of freedom where like, it is a selection pressure where certain individuals will like happily goon themselves into oblivion. And it's just like, this is the sort of weird selection pressure where I think a lot of people, even like the tech skeptical people, are like, actually maybe this is fine. Where like the worst people imaginable will be selected out because like this is low impulse control, but also like the freedom of it all. Because like if you turn off, I don't know, if you don't have your ad blocker turned on or whatever, you see all these people like advertising AI generated smut or whatever, and or even like just people to talk to, like companions, like Grok's like companion shit that Musk is doing is particularly interesting because you notice it's all the same shit. Like there's no real novelty to it. Like, oh, an anime girl. Okay, cool. Or like, oh, a male companion, Valentine. I'm like, this is like an anime protagonist. In the same way that like you look at all this. And again,
remember Wendy's? Do you guys are old enough to remember the Wendy's waifu?
You remember the AT&T? I remember the AT&T girl. Like, and she got a huge. There was this tweet today where it was like right wingers on Twitter will post a photo. Right wingers on Twitter will post a video of a girl with huge knockers and say this is what they took from us.
But I liked Fran, the insurance MILF.
What insurance company was she with?
Oh, what insurance company was that?
I remember the AT&T girl. I remember people who were being overtly sexual about Flo from Progressive Insurance a while back.
I believe the milk truck driver is his account's name is in reference to that woman.
I'm not really surprised
because someone tweeted at her like milk truck Flo. Thank you, Flo.
Yeah, Flo from Progressive.
Progressive, yeah, Flo, yeah. Flo's great. She even looks great still. Total. Don't take your favorite AI program.
You did this
anyways, to
yourself.
I know. No, but you know what that's exactly what I said. Do you remember that Twitter rant I did a week ago? Where that long post about like I was replying to Distributist. Do you remember this one?
Yes, I do. I think I retweeted it.
Yeah, because the algorithm and people that control the algorithm, because they deem effort posting as an abstraction or as something that's not necessary. That because Grok is the world depository of information.
I blocked Grok. I was so tired of getting tagged and shit by that stupid bot.
But in other words, something that is very apersonal, something that is essentially an algorithm itself, beefed up to be a more effective algorithm. Although I would argue its efficacy. There's many short films and things I've forgotten about that I watched when I was a kid. I'm trying to like describe these like Canadian short films to Grok that I saw when I was a kid, but I just can't get it. It's just it's stupid. But maybe it's also just like ChatGPT.
Well, it's also like because Google's gotten worse too.
Yeah, Google's gotten worse. Yeah.
It's like okay, well these things I was exposed to, they're all gone. And I totally and it's like, oh, okay, like they're gone. I understand. Like it's but the things have gotten worse, yada yada yada. And you're like, all right.
But the point being is that knowledge itself is no longer like this was Elon.
There's no guarantee.
Yeah.
There's no surety.
It was his supposed promise that Grok would lead to a renaissance of knowing. But in fact, ironically, and again, you could do the Adam Curtis documentary voice. Grok was meant to be a renaissance of knowing, but it only led to more ignorance because you have stupid people or people that are, let's say, not acquainted with the English language that are asking Grok these. I remember it was another viral tweet I had where it's like I'm listening to one of these big political Twitter spaces. It was right around the certain Jeffrey character who's a very powerful person who did not who redacted himself.
Yeah.
Mr. Jeffrey. These guys
the one who had all those clips of his cell and like
the dentist
Vader
chair
walked in, you had everyone else walk in. It was a great time.
Yeah, he had the island. So he had the plane, Alan
Bill Clinton wrote on it all the time.
Yeah. So they were doing a Twitter space when the whole debacle with Trump in the file was not released. This was like a mainstream, like the biggest like political Twitter spaces. It wasn't that Suleiman guy. It wasn't
You mean the Mario Narafal?
No, it wasn't him. It was someone else.
Okay.
It was a panel of 10 people. All of them verbally typing while they're typing, verbalizing, spitting into the microphone, talking past each other, verbalizing at Grok, who is Jeffrey this person? At Grok.
I feel like you can say his name without getting demonetized.
Can we say Jeffrey Epstein? Yeah. Okay, so at Grok, who is Ghislaine Maxwell? And while they're typing it, they're saying at Grok, who is Ghislaine? At Grok, who is Alan Dershowitz? At Grok, who is Tom Hanks? It's like I was stunned. I was lurking in the space for I think like 2 minutes.
Well, this is the uncomfortable fact of what you would call like this is why I'm not a big dead internet. I should go on
TikTok sex freak, but I should go on TikTok. You know I found? You know who does make great art? Sorry, Prudent. Let me.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
You know who does make great art? Go to Instagram or go to TikTok right now. Look up Joey Scary. It's the best conspiracy schizo art. The editing style of these videos. He had one on like he bought the emerald tablets, but he tried to resurrect Thoth, the god Thoth, to sell kitchen knives to boomers, but it didn't work his plan. Go, like that's pure art. People on Twitter, they don't know anything about art, okay? Go to Instagram, look up Joey Scary right now. I got to interview this guy. People want to talk about Twitter schizo posting. You have nothing on Joey Scary.
What if he actually believes the shit that he makes?
People actually believe the stuff he made. Yeah, I'm sure. But anyways, go ahead. I had to mention that. Like people, like they were verbally asking Grok while they were typing at Grok, who is Tom Hanks? At Grok, who is Rusty Shackelford? It's like,
oh my gosh. Well, this is why I just feel like, like dead internet theory is just like the rest of the world got internet access and you're getting to experience IQ differentials in real time. Grok, is this true? And it's just like, well, like, there's a certain book I want to reference here that I'm not for the sake of optics here, but it's just like, well, the rest of the world got internet access and you are all now experiencing the first time trying. It's like Encino Man, like you just brought a caveman into like the 21st century and they're like, whoa, you have this magical device that tells me it's true? No way. And it's like, no, it just makes you an idiot. Yeah, it's with Brendan Fraser, because he's like a caveman that they dig out of this construction site and they try to make him it's like Blast from the Past, but like with 30,000 extra years. Like they did the same movie twice.
Oh, thank you for the new schizo keynote.
just thinking out loud. That's all.
No, you could read something. You could read. What's a great work of literature you often quote, Prude? Give me something.
A great work of literature. I don't really.
What's a great quote you remember? Great quote.
The quote being like, I think, what is it? It's the Dostoevsky quote, like the greatest sin that you can commit is that you've betrayed yourself for nothing.
At Grok, is that true?
Yeah, right.
Like it's oh my god. But see, to relate it back to Byung-Chul Han though, that assurity of knowledge at your fingertips has that inverse of leading to ignorance, because it's no longer the sort of, and because Byung-Chul Han talks about temporality a lot, right? As a Heideggerian. No longer is the temporal horizon of knowledge something that is gained through blood, sweat, and just burning your eyeballs through reading. No, it's something that you at Grok with.
Yeah.
Right? There's no temporal horizon there. It's instantaneous. And when Grok doesn't spit you out the right answer, then it's like, it's over. Right? So AI is not a revolution as such, in the sense that it will lead to a sort of mass democratic adaptation of knowledge. It will lead to its opposite, in fact. And I think,
I think this is the really interesting thing is, have you noticed over the last couple of years that there has been this reduction, or at least a drop off in the term democratization?
Yes,
like I've noticed that, where like people were like, we're finally gonna like have more democratized institutions. People are gonna have a greater say in things, and it's like, well, now they all have a say in things, and guess what? They're all saying, "Grok, is this true?" Or they're consulting with Chat GPT, or even lawyers are getting arrested, or not arrested, but they're facing ethics violations with their state bar associations for using GPT to write a fucking motion. And they're like, hey, half the cases you cite here don't fucking exist. So it's just like, okay, what are we doing now? Like there is like
it might as well just be House of Leaves reciting fake studies on the house.
Well, exactly. And so it's just like, not only are you citing fake shit, but also you have drastically reduced the IQ of this room to be just room temperature, because we've got nothing else to say other than asking the machine, is it true? And like Gravantis had this great tweet that of course goes viral. I'm envious of his ability to go viral with mundane shit. But he had this great tweet where and again, I'm citing tweets. This is how awful I am. But he had a point where he was referencing an old Twilight Zone episode in which this guy has this little like genie oracle thing that he asks for advice for a sign, and he becomes so dependent upon it that he can't live without it. And he's just like totally not, also totally not relevant to this conversation, but like with ChatGPT and Grok. And it's like, and then it's like 5 million views. And I'm like, damn, Graventus, I really hope that your Twitter account's monetized, because that must be a nice payout to live in California and deal with that shit. But like,
he lives in California?
Yeah, he's a Californian.
I wonder if he goes to the Brothers of Alaska. Do they open to the public?
I don't know. You could ask him. We could have him on as a guest. He has a book to promote.
Oh, he does?
Well, he put together and republished a lot of works of an American saint.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, but I mean, wow. I mentioned this because like there is this. We've
used to come on BTR.
We've regenerated. That's a funny mental image in my mind. But like we've reinvented like this weird companion dependency, and it's really funny because I think it's in T2 where fucking Sarah Connor makes this joke about like we should be nice to machines because it's like the answering machine that so and so's answering. Or maybe it's T1. Who knows? I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was T1, I think.
Yeah, it was T1. But I thought it was really funny in retrospect to look at that and just be like, well, we should be nice to machines. Because we anthropomorphize shit. We always have. Man has always done that. And so it's really hard to anthropomorphize things nowadays because why? We used to find that sort of like transformative aspect within ourselves to be either horrifying, and now it's just fetishized.
Yeah.
And now we want to be a robot. Now we want to be fucking we want to date the horse girl from that retarded gotcha game that's been turned into a meme on like Telegram for the last like 2 weeks. Like I want to save
the girl from
being turned into paste.
No, what was that stupid where they're lost in space and they only have a mouthwash? I want to save the girl from mouthwash. It's like okay. Like, fine.
Man, talk about trauma porn and like the most like you actually play as the bad guy. And I'm like, so do you people just always envision yourselves as evil pieces of shit worthy of like damnation? Because if so, that is a unique quasi-Christ consciousness that I think is totally worth exploring. What's that? You're evil and your victim is voiced by a transgendered individual? There's no way I'm not reading that with some sort of like Freudian interpretation.
You know what's funny though? I will say one thing though.
Yeah.
There was a show though that did have a individual of a certain identity transformer that was about that Gio game where it was like a live action thing. What are they called? He's a Canadian actor, but it had one of them. But I think it was a great series. Well, it was called Welcome to. Oh, I forget what it was called. But I kind of I didn't like the ending. Spoiler alert, because it was about the guy's struggle with alcoholism rather than the game that they were playing in real life. One of those what are they called? That guy that was a tech millionaire in Silicon Valley, and a person actually died in the California desert playing one of these games. It was geocaching or whatever.
Well, geocaching is like treasure hunting, where
no, it's where you're playing a real LARP game.
Oh, well, then I have no idea. Because geocaching, I don't know if it's still popular. Geocaching is when you would look for these little boxes or trinkets or secrets out in certain locations that were kind of.
It was with Jason Segel. It was it's called. Oh my god!
Chat, help him so we can go back to the book.
It was a series.
Chat, you're the third chair. I'm asking you, I would ask Brock to do something.
Dispatches from elsewhere.
There you go.
That was a great. It was one of those IRL puzzle games. That blended reality and fiction, and it was a great mini.
So an ARG.
An ARG. It was a great series.
Augmented reality game.
Augmented reality game. It was a great series, but at the very end, I didn't like the very end. It was all about a foil for his struggles with alcoholism or whatever. It's they could have focused more on it. I know. It's trauma dumping. It's is it ethno guesser? Can you imagine if AMC produced a show about
AMC presents Ethno Guesser, and it's got the same kind of it just shows random faces, but it still has the Walking Dead theme. And it's just you can't, and just a guy stressing the hell out because he doesn't want to be called a racist, but he's just I don't know what the hell this is. And then he's just and then you just hear someone shout, Igbo! Igbo! And he's no, that's not it! And then he clicks on it anyway.
And Hakan makes a cameo.
It'd be great. I just give me $250,000.
Yeah,
and I will give you the Ethno Guesser TV show. It'll be great. I asked for so little, and I can give you so much. We're this close to greatness.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so, oh man, the absence of relation to the other causes a crisis of gratification. As recognition, gratification presupposes the instance of the other. I still can't. The Ethno Guesser game on mainstream television. I was oh my god. Okay, I promise.
Yeah, great.
Back to theory selling. Okay. Back to theory selling.
Okay, whatever. You doesn't want to have fun tonight, guys. Sorry.
Oh, just I'm trying to think of that. What would the plot be? He finds.
Okay. So there is this movie. So there's this movie called The Big Year. And it's the story about, it's based off real life, and it's based about going on the big year. For bird watching, that means taking a year off and to collect as many bird sightings and recordings as humanly possible. And so your Ethno Guesser TV show is this guy from Canada, and he lives in Brampton or something. He's the last white man in Brampton, and he's just I'm gonna go on the big year. He's been playing Ethno Guesser for years. He's better than that guy who just instantly figures out GeoGuessr.
He's better than Hakan.
This is Hakan. Hakan is now canonically Canadian for the sake of the Ethno Guesser.
Indigenous Canadian.
The last Indigenous Canadian in Brampton. And he is there. And he's just I'm going to go on the big year. So he gets his passport. He gets his things. He dumps all of his crypto shit coins. And he's got I don't know, 1.5 million Canadian. He's fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And so he logs on and he records his adventures where he gets the guesses and he knows exactly where he needs to go because he's got like the perfect score. And he's now traveling to the most dangerous parts of like sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Papua New Guinea, and other shit
Tribes
like
that
that.
no other
Just
person
to
has
get like a selfie with these random faces for genetic profiles, and everyone's just like, you go. And then of course it tragically ends where like he gets the last picture, but as we see the last photo, there's like a spear coming into the background or something like that. And it cuts to black, and it's just like Ethno Guesser by AMC. See, like the number, hire me.
Someone's gonna clip this.
I know. And you know, it's so funny is like I'm sitting here in a fucking t-shirt in basketball shorts because I am sweating like a whore in church. And it's just like this is what I'm thinking of. So just to our art friends, go clip this one, but go have a frog in a white t-shirt and basketball shorts talking about Ethno Guesser, produced by AMC. Starring Anson Mount. Who cares? You know, from Hell on Wheels.
No, but if he's Indigenous Canadian, he's got to be Adam Beach.
That's fair.
Because like Adam Beach has a perfect like plucky personality sometimes, you know. He's like, guys, his
girlfriend can be Alison Pill, you know. Then it's really like the Goon. Except she's a little older now. Get some. Put in like young, hot Canadian actress.
What's her name? Pugh, that Zoomer actress. Pugh.
Oh, Pugh or whatever. Oh, she was in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Throw her in, Coach.
He needs a love interest. And there's gonna be a cameo by Nemitz. He goes to Las Vegas and then Nemitz like guides
and Nemitz shows him the tunnel people.
Tunnel people. Yeah, he's gonna like ethnically guess the tunnel people. Carson Daly needs to make a comeback. There you go.
Tunnel snakes rule.
Apparently, this is what Nemitz said, that there's a whole process of cross-species transmogrification going on with the Las Vegas tunnel people. As a water worker, he should know. I think he encounters like. They have a secret military thing.
It's so funny because I've met people IRL who have met him, and he always introduces himself as Peter Nemitz from Twitter. Like he doesn't give you his real name. He just says, I'm Peter Nemitz from Twitter. And I find that really respectable. I don't know why.
It's funny how like they hand him the flashlight and the sidearm. They're like, okay, you have to go repair that water main right now. He's like, I don't want to go in there. I can't. It's like, no, you have to go.
No, I think he's plucky enough to just be like, okay. I'm going to write a great Twitter thread about this later.
I think the film would have
the anthropological studies of Peter Nemitz from Twitter.
I think Vincent Gallo would have to have a role somewhere.
Yeah, like he's the guide for some tribe.
He plays every Vincent. Like, listen, I've watched the majority of Vincent Gallo films. He's the same character, the genius asshole that's frustrated and that's like caught and torn between his genius and his past. That's Vincent Gallo. He does it amazingly. He would be like the total asshole ethno-guesser guide. And he'd be like, you know, what did I tell you? These people have spears, okay? You can't go there. What did I tell you? Okay? You know what you are? You
got a poison dart in your ass. What I tell you? Okay? You're going to trip as hard as hell. This shit one-shots AI startup directors. What I tell you. But no, you had to go on the big year. You had to leave Canada, huh?
You live in Canada.
You had to guess them all.
I can just imagine Vincent.
Sorry, Ash Ketchum, but this shit's going to rock your world.
Oh, man. I love, like, he's my favorite actor. I love Vincent Gallo.
We're here to have fun, chat. We're here to have fun. If you're not, I don't know what to tell you. I'm here for a good time.
Do you remember Vincent Gallo in the stupid Daily Wire movie? He's like, yeah, baby.
Oh yeah, because he played his arm gets more screen time than he does.
I know. I was so pissed at that. I was so bad. You have one of the most brilliant acting minds that have ever walked the face.
And you make him a pervert for 5 minutes. No way. What's that? His arm is seen more than he is.
listen, I'm sorry, okay? I was just having a bit of a moment. I was backed up, okay? I'm sorry. We're gonna have to guess this. Don't worry about it.
The keto people, okay? Got it. You know where that's
You're
from?
terrible, you scum. You're never gonna
spent
make
600 grand to get here? You're on the other side of the world? Did you take your malaria pills? No, I guess not.
There's a film I watched on Tubi. Vincent Gallo is part of a space exploration to Mars, and they find ancient ruins. And he's the ship scientist. He's the engineer, and he's like the perfect like asshole. Like, listen, only 2 of us are gonna survive. Okay? It's like I made these calculations. They're perfect. Only 2 of us can survive, and it's like imagine being trapped on a doom mission to Mars with Vincent Gallo.
Bone chilling.
Oh, bone
chilling.
Oh man, there's a 0% chance someone would guess Italian for Gio. Well, maybe. I mean, I have very non-Italian features. It's probably my, I don't know.
So they would be like Mediterranean.
Probably the product
with
of
a
the
bit
Norman
of
invasion.
uralic. Who knows?
I am probably a product of the Norman invasion. Let's be real. So, anyways, wow, this has been quite a trip. We're never gonna get the rest of this article.
What a great time. I did the math.
You know why you're not gonna make it? Because you're stupid. Okay, you guessed Igbo. Are you kidding me? I could have guessed Igbo. I could have guessed Igbo.
Yeah, I'm like Dr. House. It's never lupus and it's never Igbo.
Wait, there's an article.
I just distinctly remember that tweet where it's like, if you know the phrase Igbo, you're either like a sociology professor or you're just like a really racist guy on Twitter.
Some poor
like, little do they know.
Philosophy student's gonna be like, "Where is he talking about being? What gooning?
What gooning? What the hell is that?"
Okay, you know what's funny is that I noticed in the past, since the return from break, it's almost like I become the straight man somewhat, and you've become like the wild card. And somewhere, okay, that's. Oh boy, oh.
The people told me while we were on break from the show, they were like, "Prude, you need to have fun more often." So I'm trying. It's like therapy. I'm trying. I'm here. I'm listening.
10% not gonna make it. Oh man, you know what's funny is that it was full of like Spanish actors too. It was a great film. It was called Stranded or something like that. Just go to Tubi, search Vincent Gallo, and you'll find it.
I love this though, where he's just like,
Tubi, it's the greatest hits. Go to Tubi right now.
I always say, yeah, like that's like
all I watch. It's Tubi and like podcasters. I'm on my alt more times than I care to count. You have no idea how much Twitter Spaces I've been on. That guy's totally right.
It was Bill Wilson that said, he's like, if it's not on Tubi, it doesn't exist as a film for Gio. Tubi should endorse us, man. That'd be great. Like, we give more props to Tubi than anybody else. No, Tubi would never endorse us, but it would be funny though if they did. Anyways, oh boy. The absence of relation to the other causes a crisis of gratification, as recognition gratification presupposes the instance of the other, or of the third party. It is impossible to reward oneself or to acknowledge oneself. For Kant, God represents the instance of gratification. He rewards and acknowledges moral accomplishment. Because the structure of gratification has been disturbed, the achievement subject feels compelled to perform more and more. And that's the key. The absence of relation to the other then represents the transcendental condition for the crisis of gratification to arise in the first place. However, contemporary relations of production are also responsible. A definitive work on the result of completed labor is no longer possible today. Contemporary relations of production stand in the way of conclusion. Instead, one works into the open. Conclusive forms with beginning and an end prove wanting. So again, this is another thing that I think Byung-Chul Han in Psychopolitics offers a very powerful critique of Marxist dialectics as well, even though he's doing it from like an apolitical sort of like philosophic position. He's saying, well, if you've obliterated the other and if you have obliterated the sort of exploitation of labor or labor surplus, then you're no longer living in a Marxist axiomatical universe. You're living in something else. So in a weird way, like he provides like the most like non-right-wing critique of Marxism there is, which I think has like frustrated a lot of like philosophy grads, for instance. But Richard Sennett has also traced the gratification crisis to a narcissistic disturbance and the absence of the relation to the other. Quote, as a character disorder, narcissism is the very opposite of strong self-love. Self-absorption does not produce gratification. It produces injury to the self. Erasing the line between self and other means that nothing new, nothing other ever enters the self. It is devoured and transformed until one thinks one can see oneself in the other. And then it becomes meaningless. The narcissist is not hungry for experiences. He is hungry for experience. Looking away, looking always for an expression.
Real quick, Gio. I hate to interrupt, but like that whole passage reminded me. So this is about, good God, 6 years ago. I
have to go get some water, so
that's fine. I can rant on this for a hot minute. So while Gio is out, and hopefully he's back with milk and cigarettes before the end of the stream. But so this was 6 years ago. I was at a conference for nonprofit management and nonprofit fundraising, which is weird to say 6 years ago because, good Lord, I was younger back then. And the lady up there was talking about how to get people engaged in volunteer work and hosting events, galas, fundraisers, etc. And she was like, well, with the younger generations, and she's talking about millennials at this point. This was before the real big Gen Z conversation. And she's talking about the necessity about making things experiential. People want to know, how can I make this about myself? How can I put myself and to tell my story and to get experiences for experience sake, because they want to feel good. They want to do something, but they want to know how they can get themselves involved. So it becomes this weird, well, it's not really a weird, it's just a plain out inversion of the Christian concept of charity, to do these things in secret because your Father in heaven will see it. Those who do it publicly will have their reward, right? And so now everything for experience sake, everything now has become this sort of like cult of obligation, in the sense that like we must engage in this particular way, otherwise none of the things that we do will make sense, because how can I make sense if it doesn't have me involved at all? And the thing about like consuming, especially in regards to like the sort of like the charity progress industry, is that like the thing to make it about me is very much present, because for a lot of people, what is the point of engaging in these kinds of volunteer worker activity? The expectation of a reward, whether it's the community service hours that's mandated by your company, or it's the experience of wanting to feel good and have your photo taken. This is sort of that liberal narcissism that like even boomer cons will critique and point out. We're like, you're only doing this to feel good because this is sacramental to you. Again, that inversion of the pre-existing religious order, where things, the sacred has been devaluized, and Byung-Chul Han talks about this in the disappearance of rituals, that we invent new rituals for the sake of fulfilling the urge to consume and to make. And when, because I work in a particularly like strange industry, which, I think Yarvin has got a really good term for it, where he calls it being a professional progressive. Like I am, but I like to use my powers for good. And people do it though for the experience and for the explicit purpose of, I want to be part of something. There's no like differentiation from the self, because everyone is wanting the self to be at the center of it all. And like what he's saying here, right, with narcissism, it's very present, it's very clear. There's nothing else that you can really look at in this regard, because that's really the only way and the only place that you can go. Because we're like, oh, well, we were supposed to see ourselves and others are supposed to see ourselves in our neighbors or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You're doing it because you want to feel good. You're doing it because you want to participate in a practice that is supposed to absolve you of something. The otherness, whether it's in the sense that Byung-Chul Hung is writing, or even, and I mean, he's a Catholic, so it's not like I can definitely get where he's coming from here. Like, even the otherness of, say, the evil one, the devil, the demons, the prince of this world, that has been absolved for most people, because we live in a fundamentally post-Christian society in the West, especially in Europe. That those things have been have faced a sort of transvaluation, to where now it's a much more secular format. It's far more in the material, but this also means we engage politically and also socially in our works of charity, so we can do things for ourselves. And there are very few people who engage in these sort of things without really telling anybody, or without making it about themselves. And that's when you really appreciate the work that they do, because it's so rare for you to find people who are doing this out of either the goodness of their hearts, because they believe in the cause or whatever. Because true believers are rewarded these days, especially in a lot of progressive causes, with the feeling of like, well, you'll be rewarded because this is part of like our patronage system, or this is part of our political network. There's nothing more to it other than we're just rewarding you for being such a good boy or a good girl, and donating your time to support, I don't know, like height disadvantaged youths or whatever. Thank you for spending time at the Manlet Foundation.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant point, because a lot of contemporary political discourse is sort of driven inwardly. And I think that...
well, hell, even most political engagement is done for the sake of the influence campaign.
Exactly.
Because everyone and their mother wants to be the guy who gets heard.
Yeah. The other becomes irrelevant. The other becomes an abstraction. Even people that...
The other can be a shadow that you box for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And this isn't like just to pick on leftoids or whatever. I mean, the people on the political right do it as well. Like, I mean, maybe differently, but the other sort of sinks into an abstraction where it doesn't really... I remember when, and again, not to like, I mean, well, actually, I am accusing them of insufficient activism. There was a poem after the initial response to October 7th a few years ago, saying, we have a G word I just stop in laundry to make. And it was like this very quirky millennial, like...
I think we read it on stream.
We read it on stream, yeah. It's this very quirky millennial, like soillennial type of thing of like trying to poetically relate everyday life to activism. But the problem with that is that your activism only extends to this weird mixing up of everyday life, and the actual people suffering are almost irrelevant. No, you could say the opposite. You could say, how dare you as a right-winger say this, because, your government support this regime, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, yeah, fine. I agree. Like, even though the Canadian government is way more lenient, for example, on the Palestine protesters than they've ever will against, this is what Polyev said recently about the truckers, right?
Yeah.
That being said, my position is clear. I think it's fine to protest for Palestine. But I think that the problem is that when you have a legitimate real-world crisis meeting an existential crisis of activism that is largely driven by media spectacle, the actual casualty of people on the ground goes wanting, because now it becomes the performativity of it. And so the other, and this is Byung-Chul Han's point, the other becomes erased. Politics is something very ancient. Politics, I mean, I'm quoting a certain problematic thinker who, was a fan of certain regimes that I don't endorse, but, in terms of his analysis of the American empire, fine. He said, politics is the manifestation of a spirit of a people that comes from their culture. Politics is the mediation simply of that group of people's destiny and what they deem to be within the essence and the root of themselves as a culture. That is what politics is. right? Politics, by definition, is of the other being similar to yourself, but the other nevertheless forming a community that comes from a unique culture. Because, of course, this thinker was influenced by Spengler, right?
Yeah.
And Spengler even talks about this. Spengler talks about politics as the relation of a culture to itself, right? But when you complicate this in a globalized world, in a media-fabulated world, through the digital media, through the digital medium, politics no longer becomes about a very strict delineation of self and other, of self as my own, self as my community, self as my culture, by which Spengler meant culture as something greater than what we mean as culture, as the foundation of a civilization. When politics becomes this like weirdly inverted existentialism where I gain legitimacy through political activism, I gain a sense of self through my political beliefs, politics becomes a lifestyle brand. Then politics ceases to exist the way that it always has, right? Politics no longer is the manifestation of this, like Sean Wyland, friend-enemy distinction. Friend-enemy distinction goes to the very root of what a culture is on a civilizational level. When politics drives inwardly to the self-performing, to the self-occluding, to the self-fabulating subject, to where the spectacle of activism and political engagement becomes this nebulous abstraction, then politics ceases to mean anything. Activism ceases to mean anything. Because in a world where we do live in sort of like, this like transnational nowhere land, the global airport, as I call it in my forthcoming book, then we are not simply engaged in politics. We are engaged in something else. And so this is a way that activists on every side of the political spectrum have sort of fallen into the trap of, and the alt-right did this as well, right? Was it about really saving that statue in Charlottesville, or was it about certain online personalities that could, get young men to ruin their lives, right? To which I'm referring to a guy with a certain hairdo, right? Was it really about that statue at that point, or was it about him? You have to think of this for a moment. Is it really about the Palestinians, or is it really just about your online clout and leftist circles, right? And now you can say that's a very cynical take, and to which I agree. There are people that do genuine.
I think it's totally justified, though. I think I think if anything, the time online, and I mean, I've been consuming more than I've been a producer. But I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years now, and it's just like I think that being cynical is sort of the correct way to look at it, because at the end of the day, like, and we see this even with like normie YouTube, and I don't mean this in a denigrating way, but like you can see that there is a whole ecosystem of people that will tell you about the rise and fall of certain personalities. And why are they telling you about the rise and fall of certain personalities? Because being this big and being exposed to this many people who want to listen to you, who hear you, who want your takes, who want your opinions, who want you to consume or produce or do whatever, you become infatuated with yourself, and the narcissism returns, and then you have you want to be a production machine, and so now that is taken literally to its logical conclusion, where your now entire existence is based on your ability to produce content that may not actually necessarily be meaningful, right? Like you're not making great work. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying you in the general sense. But like, you're not making great work. Yeah, you're not making great works of art. You're not building a building. You're not being part of something that most people would constitute as this like grand thing, or of a design or a project that people are going to remember you for. Like, really, at the end of the day, this boils down to like, you had 5 to 6 years of fame, maybe a couple of million subscribers, and this is your life. And you can watch all types of people burn out or let the greed get the best of them, and they turn into the most insane fucking people on earth. Like, how many YouTubers have had sex scandals, that like have rocked like even like the regular
How many YouTubers have had fake charity boxing matches that they were never going to intend to do?
Have
money to go to
what's that, creator class?
Right?
What? Who would have guessed?
Who would the edgelord with edgelord's remorse. Shocker, he's a scamming grifter. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh, his OnlyFans wife, failed streamer, is a grifter that is cynically using leftist YouTubers and Twitch streamers in the Palestine issue for their own material gain. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
No way.
Yeah, no way. Right?
No way.
Now, I will say one thing. It's a very cynical thing that's justified, but there are still people out there doing genuine things. There's still people out there that's doing genuine charity work, that are doing genuine religiosity, genuine politics. So I don't want to like mistake this for blackpilling.
No, but like I think it's safe to say,
there's people that use their religiosity as a form of content maxing and debate broing, and really, what the real Catholicism, Catechism of the Catholic Church, or the real mysteries of Orthodoxy.
And this is where I remember a couple of, like, this was about a year ago. I think I had said something online where I was like, I really don't like a lot of that stuff. And I'm being very cynical.
Of course not.
Because it's like a lot of it stops being about whatever you purport to believe in, because this turns into a job, or this turns into your own sort of personality thing. And there are very few people who I would recommend or based on their character, but it's just like I didn't get into what I'm in because of that stuff, and so my biases are definitely showing. But it's like, come on, like some of this just turns into really bad, like don't put your subscriber plaque next to your crucifix. Like, what are you doing? That's idolatry.
There is, I think it was a Desert Father, or was it a saint, that said that the act of conversion can potentially entail one-on-one interaction and really hammering out theological issues on a very personal basis that could happen for years or a lifetime to just convert one person into a faith.
I'm sure that's been said by many people,
right.
But as I've said it, I mean, theology is a lived thing. You can read and study as much as you want. Theology is lived. And that means you actually have to live what you say. And I think that everyone, regardless of your faith or even your politics or even a hobbyist, right? My favorite video is always from the late Paul Harrell, where he's like, how to spot a fake gun expert. And it's just like, you can easily tell who's faking it here. And this goes to everything and anything that you can think of, religion or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, this becomes about them. And it becomes less and less about the subject matter at hand. And I never want to become that guy. And that's why I'm very much like not big on the cult of personality or the big parasocial thing. Like, I don't like the attention. And people are like, well, that seems like very gay or kind of like weird to say that. And I'm like, no, because like the last thing you want is your own worst tendencies to be rewarded and blown up by the nature of how you engage online.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know, there's a million different people that have destroyed themselves and their careers and things like that. It's like, I don't want to turn into that guy. Like, if I'm doing this in 10 years, 5 years from now, it's either because you and I got picked up somewhere, or we've received some very wealthy patronage, or by Tubi, right? Or we've made some really bad decisions in our lives. Like that's how I look at it.
No, but I think that there are certain people that I think have a grandiosity to their mission that are certainly admirable. Like, I could think of, I don't know, Swami Chinmoy, who had like the world peace sites. I believe when I was born in 1993. He blessed Niagara Falls. I actually did a drawing. I'm going to do a drawing again now that I have more skills. This is many years ago. And, there's a thing to that, like that there would be world peace sites, and that, Sri Chinmoy can bless the world and pray for the liberation of the world. A lot of these people that are in these new religious movements and so on and so forth, and some of them were cults or whatever, but there is something to that, I think. Mm-hmm. But again, that is sort of, I think, and a lot of the New Age movement, I think, was this, which was trying to grasp or to grapple with a deeply felt spiritual impulse that had been clouded by modernity, but also had been clouded by a reintegration of the world with itself in terms of like the dawn of globalization and so forth. And so it was a way of trying to navigate what it means to have a world in which civilizations peter away to a sort of globalized whole. And I think a lot of people in the New Age movement, a lot of them were misguided purposefully, to say the least, without going into it. You know, I think in some respects was sort of like a noble endeavor of trying to really grapple with the situation that people were given at the later half of the 20th century. But that led to a lot of very terrible things. Led to a lot of very terrible grifting and guruism and so forth, right? But at the same time, I think the sort of praying for the liberation of the world and praying for the liberation of all peoples of mankind and so on and so forth, that's much different than the phenomenon we're talking about here when it comes to gearing yourself in such a way to where no longer are you praying, no longer are you preaching, no longer are you doing politics to the grand other on a planetary scale. Because this is the thing, if you read Consumerism, for example, planetary politics ultimately ends with the destruction of all difference, to which you cannot have the other. It is the self-enclosure of the world, rather than the sort of like reintroduction of the world to itself, if that makes sense. It's rather a closing than an opening. Globalization has led to the closing of civilizations rather than a grand sort of spiritualized hippy-dippy, we sing We Are the World, Toto's Africa sort of deal at the end of the Cold War. No, in fact, it's the opposite. It's a closing down of distinction. When you close distinction, this is what Byung Chul Han is saying. When there is no self, there is no other. When there is no other, there is no self. And this works on a grand civilizational level. Without the other, there is no self as well. And so I think the problem is that a lot of people in the New Age movement, for example, were trying to wrestle with this reality. What does it mean to have a global spirituality? But that there's a good interpretation of that that's very hippy-dippy and flighty, and, you know, let's pray for world peace. But what's the bad interpretation of that? It's the global council of churches. It's pure globalism. It's pure subversion. So, you know, there's always like an A side and a B side to everything when it comes to dealing with the conditions that we're living in. If you look at the history of the Global Council of Churches, the Federal Council of Churches in America, I mean, it's hair-raising. It's hair-raising. But, you know, so I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, do conflate good intentions with a lot of bad actors, and bad actors that have exploited good intentions and such things as the New Age movement, right? So, but my grand point is that on a global level, this sort of like erasure of the other has not led to greater understanding. It's led to the opposite. And again, like you mentioned McLuhan about the global village, right? So, you know, that in itself is very indicative of what we're talking about. And I think Byung Chul Han would agree.
Writes about this in, about the leveling.
Yes.
That, like, all things are leveled down and reduced with no distinction whatsoever. Like, there is nothing left to separate you and I. There is no form of like personality. We've been reduced to these sort of like common systems, and that's all that's left. And what does that lead? Well, he kind of builds off of this, or I think that you can see a building off point when you read that sickness unto despair, because not only now it has, that sickness unto death, which is about despair. And it's just like now at this point, we're all dealing with the fact that we're all, we've been reduced. We have been algorithmically, leveled down to nothing. And so what does that reduce us to? That just reduces down to something where it's like, oh, well, I'm just like everyone else. There is no uniqueness, because even now people can all speak in the same tone, the same language, use the same emojis or whatever. Greetings from Australia, but then 2 seconds later in Twitch, they'll be using like let's just say poggers or whatever. Like, it's incredibly depressing. And I'm using kind of this like kind of overdone example or whatever you want to call it. But like, what does that do but other than provide a suicidal impulse to society where it's just like, well, there's nothing now. We're all the same. And, we're just going to just reduce ourselves because the chiliastic optimism is gone. The orgy is over. History didn't end. And now all of a sudden, we're left with a system that has tried to erase us. And turns out most people don't like being erased.
Well, even Kojev admitted that, by the way, with his discourse with Theo Strauss.
Yeah.
He's like, the last man will be like, a terribly insular and not unhappy person, but it's for the good of humanity because this is the final form of everything. So who cares? Like that. I know I'm butchering Kojev's argument. He had a much more sophisticated argument, but he was self-aware of that. that like
Yeah, I mean, I even wrote about
Yeah.
this in an article a couple of years ago. I have it as a video on YouTube. It's called Kierkegaard in the gay paperclip, where it's just like
Oh yeah, I think I remember that one.
the gray goo scenario. We're already there, and it didn't really require nanomachines because the form of global liberalism that we exist under has already turned you into paperclip utility maximizers, and that paperclip better have a rainbow color to it, because if not, you're not part of the system. I mean, like, even in the magosphere, right? Like, what is everyone talking about? So it's like, well, why did USAID spend X number of $1 million to promote atheism in Paraguay or whatever? Like, that's an insane thing to consider. It's just like religiosity being one of the most important cultural headstones of any diverse country or like people. And it's just like, yeah, that's got to go. You all got to be atheists, you know?
Yeah, Richard Dawkins, fake Sagan, and Brett Keane when he was an atheist, but then he was a Christian, but then he was an atheist. All those guys, all those atheist YouTubers, Coughlin 666, they're all taking They were taking USAID. So I'm joking. I'm not accusing anybody.
That would make my life a lot easier to say that were true. I wish, but sadly, probably not.
Oh, can you imagine if?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if like
the Amazing Atheist was taking USAID.
Oh man, Banana Boy on the U.S. State Department cut. That's a terrifying notion to consider.
Oh man, I will remember the boomer, like the sort of like skull Punisher aesthetic, where it's like, I will give my life to defend atheism in Botswana. Oh man. Anyways, so this is a good point. Let's skip ahead.
Okay.
Experience, Erfahrung in German, involves encountering the other. It alters. Experiencing, Erlebnis, in contrast, expands the ego into the other, into the world. It compares. Love of the self is still determined by negativity, insofar it devalues and wanes off the other in favor of the own. The own sets itself against the other, thereby the other acts to preserve distance. Self-love means taking an explicit stand vis-a-vis the other. Narcissism, in contrast, blurs the lines and the borders. If one suffers from a narcissistic disorder, one sinks into oneself. When reference to the other goes missing, no stable self-image can form. He quotes Sennett again. Sennett maintains that the narcissistic individual intentionally avoids achieving goals. Closure yields an objectifiable form, which, inasmuch as possesses independent substance, weakens the self. In fact, precisely the opposite holds. The socially conditioned impossibility of objectively valid, definite forms of closure drives the subject into narcissistic self-repetition. Consequently, it fails to achieve Gestalt, stable self-image or character. Thus, it is not a matter of intentionally avoiding the achievement of goals in order to heighten the feeling of the self. Instead, the feeling of having achieved a goal never occurs. It is not that the narcissistic subject does not want to achieve closure. Rather, it is incapable of getting there. It loses itself and scatters itself into the open. The absence of forms of closure depends, not least of all, on economic factors. Openness and inclusiveness favor growth. Hysteria is a typical psychic malady of the disciplinary society that witnessed the founding of psychoanalysis. It presumes the negativity of repression, prohibition, and negation, which lead to the formation of the unconscious. Drive representations that have been pushed off into the unconscious manifest themselves by means of conversion as bodily symptoms that mark a person unambiguously. Hysterics exhibit a characteristic morphe. Therefore, hysteria emits morphology. This fact distinguishes it from depression. So he's talking about like psychosomatic symptoms.
Yeah.
According to Freud, character is a phenomenon of negativity, for it does not achieve from without the censorship that occurs in the psychic apparatus. Accordingly, he defines it as a participant of abandoned object cathesis, or cathetic character. Cathexis. When the ego becomes aware of object cathexis taking place in the id, it exhibits either lets them be or fights them off through the process of oppression. Character contains the history of repression within itself. It represents a determinate relation of the ego to the id and the superego. So, okay. Here he quotes Carl Schmitt. He is a man without character. Carl Schmitt says it is, quote, a sign of inner conflict to have more than one real enemy. The same holds for friends. Following Schmitt, having more than one true friend without becoming, what's he say here? Following Schmitt, having one more true friend without betaken a lack of character and definition. One's many friends on Facebook would offer further proof of the late modern ego's lack of character and definition. In positive terms, such a human being without character is flexible, able to assume any form, play any role, or perform any function. The shapelessness or alternately flexibility creates a high degree of economic efficiency. So here he's reverting, he's like, okay, Schmitt talks about the enemy, right? No one true enemy. But he's like, what if you have more than one friend? What's that going to do? Right? So we started this podcast about some cozy streamer talking about Schmitt to Mehdi Hassan. Now we're finally right back to...
Now we're back. We're back to Schmitt. We're back to Schmitt.
Exactly. What does Schmitt say? What if we had too many friends? What would that do to the friend-enemy distinction? It's an interesting thought experiment. But yeah, go ahead, Prude, if you have any.
What if we had too many? Does he expand on that? I'd like to hear that.
Yes. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Psychoanalysis presupposes the negativity of repression and negation, the unconscious and repression Freud stresses are correlated to the greater extent. In contrast, the process of repression or negation plays no role in contemporary psychic maladies such as depression, burnout, and ADHD. Instead, they indicate an excess of positivity. That is not a negation so much as the inability to say no. They do not point to the not being allowed to do anything, but to being able to do everything. Therefore, psychoanalysis offers no way of approaching the phenomenon. Depression is not a consequence of repression that stresses from instances of domination such as the superego, nor does depression permit transference, which offers indirect signs of what has been repressed. What is the idea of freedom and deregulation? Contemporary achievement society is massively dismantling the barriers and prohibitions that constitute a disciplinary society. The dismantling of negativity serves to enhance achievement. Matters reach a general state of dissolution and boundlessness, indeed a state of general promiscuity from which no energy of repression issues. Where restrictive actual morality does not pervert the impulses of the drive from being discharged, paranoid delusions do not emerge, such as those of Daniel Paul Scherber, whose Freud traced back to repressed playing for the other team. The Schreiber case typifies 19th century disciplinary society, where the strict prohibition of, being LGBT, indeed of pleasure and desire as a whole, predominated. The unconscious plays no part in depression. It no longer governs the psychic apparatus of the depressive achievement subject. Einberg, however, still holds to the idea, which throws his argument off, of course. Quote, the history of depression has helped us understand the social and mental turnaround. Its irresistible rise permeates the two pair changes that have affected the individual in the first half of the 20th century. 1, psychic liberation and identity insecurity, and 2, individual initiative and the inability to act. Those two pairings display the anthropological risk at play in the movement from neurotic conflict to depressive inadequacy in the field of psychiatry. The individual emerges from the battle to face messages from the unknown person she or he cannot control, this irreducible part that Westerners call the unconscious. According to Einberg, depression symbolizes what cannot be controlled and is irreducible. It derives from the confrontation between the notion of a limitless possibilities and the notion of the uncontrolled. Following this reason, depression occurs when the subject striving to display initiative flounders on the uncontrollable. However, the uncontrollable, the irreducible, the unknown, like the unconscious, are figures of negativity. They are no longer constitutive of achievement society, which is dominated by excessive positivity. So in other words, the sort of new sickness of our century is that of limitlessness, is that of no boundaries. And therefore, this produces an opposite effect than what people in, let's say, the previous century experienced, right? So, so having too many friends is actually a bad thing. Aristotle was 100% correct. You can only have a few true friends, if that, maybe one or two, and that's it. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the other thing too is that it's not that we're sold that there's limitless potential, in part because I think it's safe to critique. I mean, I'm not. How do I want to word this? So, I mean, like we do live in a far more consumerist society than we ever have before. We pitch it to investors all the time that the sky's the limit. We can never stop. There is. I'm not like a degrowth person in the sense that like. I want to see a reduced quality of life for my people or my friends, but at the same time,
all systems are built on infinite growth. Like that's the assumption.
But the entire superstructure of our society is predicated on an infinite growth model, which is unrealistic, unfeasible, and impossible, right? But this is like the metaphysical, if anything, at least like this is the epistemology in which the current world is framed on. Limitless potential with nothing to say no to and with no one to stop you because, in fact, you're just preaching what you would constitute as truth, which, of course, not a great model to base it on because we can tell epistemically, hey, this is not true. There are hard caps and limits on things. So what do we see lately? Well, there's been this big desire, this big push by a lot of people where it's both this sort of like downward mobility porn, but not just downward mobility in a pornographic sense of like, oh yeah, I can aspire to this or check out my tiny home. Although you see plenty of that. That is also equally a problem because we are being told fundamentally that we're supposed to have less than those that came before us, especially of our ancestry, which is a huge insult to the national character. And even though like America doesn't have the same kind of like Rome Eterna, Roma Eterna kind of concept, or like there was this forever. Who was it that said it? Was it Crassus or remember? I forget which Roman general had said this, but he said that like Rome, the city of Rome is a thought in the eternal mind of God, and it's just like that kind of thinking doesn't really exist nowadays, especially not in the West. There is no like desire to build things that will live long past us. That sort of teleological drive is gone, but we still tell ourselves that like we can reach the heavens, we can do these things, and we're still living kind of in this like post 1990s utopianism of like we can all come together and this will be the world that we live in, which cool if so that's the case. We're all kind of coming now into the hard truth of the matter that it's not true, and that kind of understanding will actually be used as a cudgel against you. Because what is the cudgel that's being used against us? Well, like, oh, well, we're hardworking, we're entrepreneurial, we are good guys and gals that are all for these things to work in our favor. But it's like, okay, well, when we have others that are brought on board to discuss these things, turns out most of the time it's just going to be used against you. And they'll use the same words and the same tone and the same phrases that you're like, oh, I'm a good guy, I put myself into the market, I'm a good capitalist or whatever. But it's like, cool, but like there are systems in place where like you're going to get taken advantage of by like an ethnic gang of H-1B visas, right? Or the Chinese guy just bought like the land in New Hampshire next to you and he's probably going to poison your water supply at some point in time. Like,
oh, that's recent. Didn't it come up?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. And it's just like, isn't that a crazy thing to fucking consider at the end of the day, where it's like that's a very real reality? And it's like, what are you supposed to tell people? Well, the sky's the limit. You just got to work hard. You just got to do these things. I know that sounds like very like kind of Marxist coded, but at the end of the day, it's just like, when we are told that we have so much, what does the system do in place? What does power do? It institutes soft caps, soft limits, these things in which we can kind of always tell like, yeah, you're not really going to go that far, or we're just going to settle for what we have. So the sky is technically on paper the limit, but we're going to offer you salves and these, I guess like these sort of like light kind of ways to engage with the world that way, you know, it's like, oh, well, if you're okay with this, then like, hey, then you've kind of made it. Like even now, where we have mutuals on Twitter that are younger than us in their early 20s that are just like screaming into the void, or they're just like raging because, you know, things have gotten so bad, and this liberation aspect of our society has basically made the basic desire to find a mate impossible. And according to some research, to a point where almost half of men have basically said the current state of affairs is not worth engaging in the most basic biological instinct, which is to seek a mate and to reproduce. Yeah. That is the greatest suicidal impulse I've ever seen.
Well, here he actually goes back to Schmidt critiquing democracy, and also he has a critique of Nietzsche as well. So let's read on. This is actually pretty good. Freud understands melancholy as a destructive relation to the other that has been made part of the self through narcissistic identification. In this process, the originary conflict with the other are internalized and transformed into a conflicted self-relation that leads to the ego impoverishment and autoaggression. So in other words, I am frustrated by the other. It leads to an internal conflict. The real object of desire is never the real object of desire. I can never get that real object, and so it's impossible. However, the depressive disorder of the contemporary achievement subject does not follow upon a conflicted, ambivalent relation to the other. It now has gone missing. No dimension of alterity is involved, the alterity of the other affecting you. Depression, which often culminates in burnout, follows from excited, overdriven, excessive self-reference that has been assumed destructive traits. The exhausted, depressive achievement subject grinds itself down, so to speak. It is tired, exhausted by itself, and at war with itself, entirely incapable of stepping outward, of standing outside oneself, of relying on the other. Well, you said men, they can no longer rely on the other for affection. Oh, there you go. That's another example. There's a lot of women can't rely on the other for affection either. To be totally fair. The self to hollow and empty out, it wears out like a rat race it runs against. New media and communication technology are also diluting being for otherness. The virtual world is poor in alterity, and the resistance is displays. In virtual spaces, the ego can practically move independent of the reality principle, which would provide a principle of alterity and resistance. And in all the imaginary spaces of virtuality, the narcissistic ego encounters itself first and foremost. Increasingly, virtualization and digitalization are making the real disappear, which makes itself known above all through its resistance. Well, AI video slop, hello. The real is to stay in the double meaning of the word, is not only offers interruption and resistance, but also affords stopping and support. The late modern achievement subject with surplus options at its disposal proves incapable of extensive bonding. Depression severs all attachments. Mourning differs from depression, above all, through its strong libidinal attachment to the object. In contrast, depression is objectless and therefore undirected. So let's go back to the example. I know we're picking on him. I don't mean to pick on him. Let's go to the example of Pine Sap. There are tweets, there are posts on Facebook, there are posts on TikTok that have millions of views, that have thousands of comments about this debate he had, right? Given the level of abstraction, do you think that, I mean, you could even ask Pine Sap, you could add him on Twitter. If you're anybody who's been a part of an online spectacle, not just him, I mentioned iDubbbz. Do you think, I mean, okay, that's a poor example.
You could even indict us on that, Gio.
Well, yeah, but my point being is that when you're in the machinations of the online world, they become abstractions. Those comments, they become nothing. They become pixels on a screen at that level of engagement. Millions upon millions of views.
To an extent.
Yeah, well, to an extent. I mean, it is personal for a lot of people. But the point
being that it also becomes nothing more but cudgels.
Exactly. But the point being is that it goes back to what Humdog said. Remember, the internet's a silent place.
Yeah.
Because paradoxically, we can interact with the other. We can interact with our A-logs and critics and people that hate us or people that love us. But at the end of the day, what she meant by the internet is a silent place is that you can only, in an online anonymous environment, the best you can do is project your own self into the other. You can curate, this is what Byung-Chul Han said, you can curate your experience, you can choose to engage, you can turn things off, you could just not look at the screen or selectively look at the screen. The point being is that the engagement with the other in the online world becomes an abstraction. It becomes something that you can choose to either engage with or create a narrative over, that at the end of the day is your own ego projection. Because the human mind cannot contemplate thousands upon thousands of millions of people commenting on what you do or looking at you or whatever. Do you think when, a performer on stage, you think all those performers that did Woodstock 99, right? In front of 300,000 people. You can't really necessarily contemplate the lives of each individual person. That's impossible, right? So instead you create a force of abstraction that you are playing to a crowd. That the crowd is a unified entity that you can tame, that you can seduce. But we're doing this every single day, right?
Yeah.
Like the Coldplay couple. Oh my God. Why is that a thing? Who cares? Right? But people are compelled to care. Because it's not about them. Right? It's about you.
It's also a public morality play. That's why.
That too. Yeah. Who would have known that rich and powerful people screw around? Wow, I didn't know that.
Wow, you're telling me for the first time.
So anyways, so then he talks about Nietzsche and then Schmidt. Ehrenberg locates depression in the same epoch with the sovereign man announced by Nietzsche has become mass reality. According to this view, the depressive is one who is exhausted by his sovereignty. That is no longer has the power to be his own master. The depressive is tired from the content needed for initiative. That is what Nietzsche and Zarathustra called the flies at the marketplace, or at least partially. The flies of the marketplace.
Yeah.
Then let's move on to Schmidt. Okay, like hysteria or mourning, melancholy is a phenomenon of negativity where depression involves excessive positivity. Might connections obtain between depression and democracy? Following Carl Schmitt, depression would characterize democracy insofar as it lacks the conclusive power of decision. Incisive, decisionistic force would prevent a draw-out conflict from arising in the first place. I think Pinesepp should have just said that. He should have been like, you know what the problem with democracy is? People can't decide anything, and people are more bitter and depressed and lonely and on the verge of collapsing more than ever. That's what he should have said. And Media-san would be like, what are you talking about? And then I would have been like,
oh my gosh. You know what I'm immediately reminded of? And this is terrible, but you know what I'm reminded of? I'm reminded of that stupid monologue Tom Hanks does in You've Got Mail where he's bitching about Starbucks. Because he's like, Starbucks is a place where people who are terrible at making decisions can feel a sense of accomplishment that they've made one important decision in their life, how they take their coffee.
But he's
and all
right.
The choices and he is right. And he's absolutely right. And I'm thinking to myself, apply that to democracy. Huh?
Media-san, have you heard of this guy? He's Korean, but he lives in Germany. His name is Byung-Chul Han. And it's like, he's really insightful.
We're also being armchair strategist podcasters at this point.
I know. But it would have been funny if he hit him with that point. That would be very funny. Where I lost my page. Oh my God, here it is. Notice where is it? Here it is. Conclusive power of decision, incisive decisionistic force would prevent a draw conflict from arising in the first place. See, so again, Byung-Chul Han, I mean, he, in certain books, he does come off as like a curmudgeon lib, but it's like I admire him so much because I'm like, I wish I did not marinate myself in online politics. I wish I was like so detached from the world of politics that I can just lay out like truths like this without caring what like leftists or conservatives, whoever, have to say, because he can like say this, but he's like totally not caring about any like political debate that people have online. It's like it's irrelevant to him. He's like an old boomer in Germany that's Korean. Who cares? So here he says, people would say, oh my God, isn't that like what a fascist would say? Byung-Chul Han would be like, I don't care. I don't care. It is what it is.
It is what it is, kiddo.
Incisive decisionistic force would prevent a drought conflict from arising in the first place. Seen in the light, depression no longer represents the lost relation to conflict, but rather the absent relation to an objective instance of decision that would produce conclusive forms and thereby assure an instance of gratification.
No way.
Einberg considers depression exclusively in terms of psychology and the pathology of the self. In doing so, he fails to consider economic context. Burnout, which often precedes depression, does not point to a sovereign individual who has come to lack the power to be the master of himself. Rather, burnout represents the pathological consequences of voluntary self-exploitation. The imperative of expansion, transformation, and self-reinvention, of which depression is the flip side, presumes an array of products tied to identity. The more often one changes one's identity, the more production is dynamized. Industrial disciplinary society relies on unchanging identity, whereas post-industrial achievement society requires a flexible person to heighten production. You heard it here, folks. This is the reactionary reading of Byung-Chul Han. Byung-Chul Han says a monarchy, an authoritarian, like a millenarian strongman, actually would cure what ails you because he can't make a decision. I'm not trying to put. I'm just joking. He's like totally pro democracy.
On the point of indecision,
Trump.
Yeah.
But
on the point of indecision, though, don't you see how like the sort of more modern political solutions? You see this in the market too, where like everything has been reduced to being just gamified.
Yeah,
because gamification offers an objective and gives you the sense of choice.
Yes.
Like that's been the solution to the indecisiveness problem. Has it worked very well? No, because I think everyone kind of just knows that like we're all being played, or there's this great collective like Weltanschauung where everyone's like, there's a game being here, and I know it's rigged, but I don't really have a choice. And maybe I can play it. And this is also why like a lot of left-wing media as of late, which I mean is still reiterating a lot of the same criticisms they've had for decades, but like it's all now in the premises of games, whether it's that movie that came out a couple of years ago about like this descending, like all these like levels, and the table would have food. And if you were on the very bottom level, you would get whatever scraps are left, and you'd probably die. And there's this kitchen and everything. Or, of course, Squid Game and all this other stuff. I mean, a lot of the dystopian aspects of this become gamified. One, in part, because I think Battle Royale is still the example from the Japanese for the media. But also, at the same time, like there is this gamified aspect of choice in which you are hoping somehow to escape the current mores of the way if you're willing to play it. And the futility of that generates that sort of nihilistic, well, what's the point of even playing, to where the indecisiveness gets played out so much where we're like, yeah, there really isn't a point to this. Why am I bothering? Hence the suicidal ideation. Hence the, well, we're just going to play and hopefully I don't do it. And then the Johnny Mandel MASH theme starts playing about how certain actions are painless and you don't want to do that. Because eventually you will play the losing hand. And it's just like, yeah, well, it turns out if you had greater goals or you had something that was like teleologically driven, dare I say, by maybe a quote unquote more strong man figure, that might not be so bad for you. But then again, that would be really evil now, wouldn't it?
And we're back to like any form of power corrupts. It's very funny like that. It's like any form of power corrupts. It's all evil. As soon as you give a strong man a lick of power. But if you give an abstract technocracy a lot of power over your life, that's fine, though. That's fine. I made you elite. That's fine, But a monarchical figure, no, that's evil. But like a Laurentian elite, for example, or the U.S. government or abstract bunch of bureaucrats. I mean, that's perfectly fine. There's
Oh,
no
of
such
course.
thing. So here he goes by EC, voluntary self-exploitation. And please need those super chats. If you want me to review 28 Days Later, all 3 films, only $100 for the price of one.
Well, you're past 3 hours, by the way, Gio.
Yeah. Voluntary self-exploitation assumes a lot of agency, true for some, but certainly not for all. Well, that's
that's true.
Here's another base take by Byung-Chul Han. Here's another base take. The deconflictization that Ehrenberg connects with the depression must be seen in light of the general positivization of society, which entails its de-ideologization. Remember, liberalism hides itself by saying it's not an ideology. Sociopolitical events are no longer determined by the clash between ideologies or classes. The very idea has come to sound archaic. But for all that the positivization of society does not abolish violence. Violence does not stem from the negativity of clash or conflict alone. It derives from the positivity of consensus. Now the totality of capital, which seems to be the absorbing everything, represents consensual violence. Struggle to no longer occur between groups, ideologies, or classes, but between individuals. Still, this fact is not important for understanding the crisis of the achievement subject, as Ehrenberg claims. What proves problematic is not individual competition per se, but rather its self-referentiality, which escalates into absolute competition. That is, the achievement subject competes with itself. It succumbs to the destructive compulsion to outdo itself over and over again, to jump over its own shadow. This self-constraint, which poses as freedom, has deadly results. And so what he's saying is that even ideology becomes something that is inwardly driven. It is not for the collective concern of one's people, of one's religion, of one's nation, of one's civilization. Rather, it is internalized within the self, right? And you could point to anything that is developed from every social revolution from the 60s or from the 19th century onwards. It's all about this sort of amalgamation of the self into a choice of nothing. Is choosing for oneself ultimately something that is evanescent, not something that's meaningful. Now, I think Byung-Chul Han makes too much of it. I think that there still genuinely is identity and ideology and ethnicity and religious conflicts and you name it. But in terms of the sort of like rootless individual of the Western world, there definitely is something to be said of all of these things being transformed into something that is inwardly driven rather than something that is for a greater whole. And
there is truth to what he writes, where like there has been this great depersonalization, because only until recently, however curated it might be from various actors, but like there has only been very recently in the greater public consciousness this return of identity. I mean, even to reference R.R. Reno, right? Like the return of the strong gods and all that. Like that's only a very recent endeavor on the public stage. And it used to just be like a really fringe minority thing akin to the Wilmot Robertson types from decades ago. Nowadays, it's far more publicly available, and to a point where it's even been gamified and commoditized for your media entertainment enjoyment of the self, because you're doing it for the self. Because again, as we mentioned towards the beginning, like what gets the group chat react is not necessarily what's going to win you the hearts and minds on the stage. And so, I mean, it puts you in a tough spot, because like, well, yeah, like this is what feels good for me, but that may totally kneecap your mission for whatever you might want to be doing online or whatever you want to do when engaging the enemy.
Yeah.
And that has its problems, obviously.
Now, he does a very good critique of Agamben, but I think like we're going to have to cut it off for next week.
Because,
we still have to watch Steingate, by the way.
Yeah, we still have to do that too. So we got a lot.
Want to do it next week? Or do you want something else to do next week?
Let's do something else. That way I can finish rewatching these 2 seasons. We'll make it a 2-parter like before. And I can...
No, but I mean, do you want to finish the Burnout Society next week?
Oh, yeah, we can finish this next week. And I'll find a PDF, and then for the book,
we can also like read the other essays too. Some of them.
Yeah, we can do something. It's not a big deal. I'm just thinking about I need time to watch the show, and I'm
me too.
Yeah, so we'll go from there, and I'll send you a file so you can watch the show.
But notice how like we'll get to it next week, but certainly I think again, like I mean, I hate to harp back on the Jubilee thing, but it's like the whole thing is a dramatic demonstration of what Byung-Chul Han is saying, is that you are not talking to the other. Pine sap or
you're talking to your friends.
Yeah, but their friends are also an amalgamation of yourself.
Yes.
You know, Pine sap and the Doomer guy and Sarah Stock, they're talking to themselves the way that Media Hassan is talking to himself. Because in his mind, the other is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if the other's a Groiper or a Tradcath or whoever. It's all just one thing, right? The other ceases to be a reality in the mind of Media Hassan.
Because
he will tell you this.
Because they become acceptable abstractions to write off.
Exactly. And he tells you this in his book about debating. I think it's called like How to Win Every Argument.
Yeah.
And he will say it. I mean, I read bits and pieces. I haven't read the whole thing because I don't want to give him my money. He said, you know, like the other is irrelevant. You can guide the other that you're debating into anything you want. You could guide them into any pigeonhole. You can guide them in any trap you want if they're sufficiently not sophisticated. So the act of debating is not the confrontation of the other. The act of debating in the online world is the confrontation of the self with a facsimile of the other that is then mediated through yourself. That is what Destiny does. That is what Vaush used to do. Hell, I mean, that is what any like good debater on our side of things does. That is what do you think Ben Shapiro meant when facts don't care about your feelings? I don't mean to go postmodernist, but the reality is that the delineation of facts is very self-serving, to say the least.
Yeah.
Feeling is, again, not to be too much, but like feeling is, again, a construct, but it's a very important construct. Feeling is informed by your picture of civilization itself, the way that politics is. Politics is informed by your culture, culture being that which is the bedrock of that civilizational understanding that you were born into, that entails all of the facticities of your life. Feeling is incredibly important. But Ben Shapiro wants to appeal to this like nebulous, abstract rationality that is actually just merely, you know, post-World War II liberalism, just like the right side of it, to say that, well, you know, facts don't care about your feelings, meaning that this something that is supposedly objective should stand in the way between your picture of what feeling, sentiment, civilization, and everything that you entail, that creates your life and your identity that you were born into, that this somehow supposedly objective thing should stand in the way of that. But that supposedly objective thing has a genealogy and has an identity and has an ideology and has a development in the intersection between like science and philosophy and so forth. So, I mean, in some ways, it's like the woke is more correct. It's like, no, actually, feeling is something that is much deeper that Ben Shapiro wants to like bracket out of the equation, which you cannot. It's impossible. Even though supposed facts, can we go and agree?
You can't erase instinct.
Exactly.
You can't erase intuition, despite all efforts to the contrary, as we've seen.
Yeah.
Over the last like 20 plus years of politics.
Now, when Ben Shapiro says like, okay, there's only two genders, this is ridiculous. Okay, fine, that's one thing. When he says that, you know, a baby in the womb is a human life, that's an objective thing, right? Like, I mean, you can say like from conception, you could say at the first trimester, whatever, right? But when Ben Shapiro then goes to other things that support his worldview, it's like, no, actually, that's not an objective thing. It's not an objective thing to say that certain people's lives are more valuable than others because they're caught up in some kind of ethnic conflict that you support. And it goes to other things. It goes to
because that just goes back to what we had said. Like, okay, Ben, facts don't care about your feelings. Like, that's true. because your feeling, your intuition, your instinct, your people, or
even economics. Let's even talk about ethnicity. Let's talk about economics. Like,
that's another good point.
The free market, 100% fact. All the supply side. A rising tide raises all ships. It's like, no, Ben Shapiro. Actually, every market is controlled whether you like it or not. Every economy is a command economy. It's just who's doing the commanding and what's the appearance of that command.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people can be tricked into thinking that there is a free market. Or even tricked into thinking that like a pure free anarchic market is like a good thing. Right? Byung-Chul Han has the best non-Marxist critique of the free market there is. But there's an illusion there that through your objective hard work and achievement that you're going to get somewhere in America or in the Western world. But there are millions of people every single day. There are some people every single day who their families have been in their country for hundreds of years. But yet the system itself does not work in their favor. That they work hard, they went to school, they're intelligent, they're able, but their quote-unquote elite human capital is not recognized by people that say and claim that they're elite human capital. Even like Richard Hanania, from Ben Shapiro, let's go to Richard Hanania and Nathan Kaufness. Do you think elite human capital is what they claim to be an objective quality? Or do you think there's a lot of social construction that goes into what a certain time period in a certain place in a certain civilization deems elite human capital? Because the elite human capital of 50 years ago would not be the Nathan Kaufness of the world. Because let me tell you about this. The nerds that were in the marketeer division of the State Department that ran World War II, rightfully, wrongfully, whatever, those nerds were quite different than the nerds we have nowadays. I don't think that Nathan Kaufness is capable of conducting a world war or capable of building a Roman aqueduct system back in ancient Rome. I don't think that he's at that level of elite human capital. I'm not saying I am either, but I'm saying that
But I know my place.
But I know my place. I'm not claiming to be super smart. I'm not. Nathan Kaufness claims to be the most
one of the greatest
philosopher.
Yeah.
So in other words, there's something to be said though. There's something to be said about that statement though, Prude, which I think even distributors neglected, which is that maybe Nathan Kaufness is right. Maybe he's the best philosopher that our generation can produce. And what does that really say? In other words, a lot of people that claim, and I think, in some ways, a lot of the leftoids, they're kind of correct in this regard when it comes to like Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro or Nathan Kaufman. Well, I should say that because like people like Hanania, they basically are just leftists nowadays, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the point being is that
he had a whole round table where he's like, he was doing the meme where like, I know it's terrible, but it was like the very ratchet ghetto meme where it's like, use your, you know what I mean, to stop a school shooter. And it's just like, he has a whole like podcast roundtable where it's like, should we just have sex with these people to reduce political polarization? And it's just like, so are you talking about sexual services as a public service, as a means of preventing? And it kills me too, because I'm thinking of that very infamous Gary tweet where it's like getting called an incel on the internet right before I tuck my children. As I tuck my like 3 kids into bed or whatever. And it's just like, because most of the guys I know, with a few notable exceptions, they're all married with kids, or they're all married, or they're young, or they're so hardworking and whatever that they don't make time for it because they're pursuant to their craft. And those guys are usually like really big on industry or whatever. So it's just like, okay, like this is the game that we're playing. And I always find that funny but also like if he's right, then right. Like we are not fit to ever talk shit about our forefathers in that regard, because it's like, they may have done some things that we disagree with. Like, you can hate Robert McNamara for whatever reason you want with your Howard Zinn brain. But I will say this, the late Robert McNamara was a better man than you in intellectual rigor, his discipline and capacity to execute a plan and develop one all by himself. Like, you and I...
he used it for evil, but that's, like, you can... Like, it's like
that's why
Fox,
I said regardless of what you think of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, regardless of what you think of him, that guy's better than us. And it's just
Yeah.
like, oh boy. That's
No,
cool.
objectively, even Henry Kissinger's objectively better than us. I mean, he's objectively better than like Richard Hanania. Come on.
That's very true.
No, it's like what Spock said.
To super chats.
It's like what Spock said to when he said, I have to admire Khan, right? And Kirk is like, how can you do that? Khan is a monster that led to the deaths of millions. And he goes, well, Kirk, you can admire a man for their greatness in terms of their accomplishment without like buying into their ideology or saying that they're a moral good person. You can say someone's objectively an evil monster, but see like, okay, but they accomplished something in history. And I think that was a great point. But any modern Star Trek iteration would never say that nowadays, right? But no, the point being is that you've reinvented the incel discourse of the left from this like weirdo
contrarian
right wing brain. Yeah, it's like no, it's like what else I watched in Tubi? If you want to pay me $100 to review it, I will, even though it's filled with a person that I hate. You know what's on Tubi? That VON no GF. And there was something that I think it was Sean Guy. I think he's still on Twitter. He said, the problem is like people think that it's like because we can't have relations with women. It's not that. It's not. It's any incel, any femcel will tell you. It's the lack of human connection. It's the lack of achieving something that was very fundamental to everybody around the globe and every civilization, both ancient and modern. It's that. So if you want to pay me to review that, then go ahead. I will suspend my hatred of certain people involved in that film to give it an objective review again. So I did review it favorably at the time, but my wars with certain people have clouded my opinion of that film. But I will review it nevertheless. So oh boy, this has been a lot. We've really bared our souls tonight, Prude.
I've sweat mine out, that's for sure.
No, I just think that we didn't even talk about the Joel Berry thing, but he's not even worried.
I already did that with Oren. And just like I expected, we called James Lindsay Media Matters. And I was informed by my loyal frog friends that he was indeed clipping and bitching. So I can't help but laugh.
Yeah.
But I did send you a tweet that we can put up as we now transition to the super chats because our friend Owen did a very good sketch that I'm a fan of.
Let me open up it's
on Telegram. I sent it to you. But do it now, Inchb. Go there on the pinned comments in the description. Go give Gio money, and then let's go answer questions and go to bed because I didn't expect us to go past 3.5 hours.
Yeah, me either. Okay. Copy. Okay, what is it?
It's Owen doing art. I'm a fan. These are really good. I might make that second one where he's behind the desk. I might use that for webcam or OBS camera footage in the future. That looks really good. Oh,
there it is.
There it is. This is me right now. I'm a fan. It's good. I'm sweating. That's true. And I have my air conditioning on, but oh well. I'll take care of it. That's really good.
Here comes August.
Here comes August. So true.
Hopefully August is drier because I want to get back out to painting. So.
Oh, so true. Yeah, I'll be painting this weekend, but I will be indoors.
Yeah. So remember, $100 for 3 films, the 28 Days Later series. If you can forward me that, I will be happy to oblige. Or if you want me to review that VON no GF, or if you want if you want me and Prude to review that VON no GF.
Oh God, let's go back in time.
Okay. I can't believe. God, I gotta find what's happening with Streamer. I have to scroll up to the YouTube comments. So let me just do that really quick. Oh my God. What are we doing here?
That's a great question.
I might have to go to the YouTube.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can add those to my.
No, actually, I'm almost at the start, so it's
okay. You're fine. You're fine. I'm literally just gonna save these images, Owen. I'm literally turning that one into another. Swap that out. Edit avatar. Which one do I want to delete? We can delete Dagother. He can go.
Oh boy.
Upload avatar. Perfect. Apply. Done. There we go. That's me right now. How did you know? I am Frog.
We need to make this a regular profile picture.
I will use it eventually. I need to. This will be part of your 2026 Prudentialist calendar available on Teespring.
Oh, there you go.
This will be for the summer months.
You got to animate. Owen Zaleski, you have to animate one with that, but like the George Costanza calendar photo, if you know what I mean.
Oh no! Oh no!
It's great. It's like that Boucher painting.
Oh no!
Okay, here we go. John Carter, our good friend, for $9.99. Our government bribed. I can't say that with. I'm not gonna put that in.
First super chat of the night. I can't read this out loud.
Our government bribed Baka, you know what, Afghans with Viagra, and now we have to give them refugee here because of what the Taliban would do to them. Wow, okay, that's in reference to the rounding error of the UK government they were letting in millions of them, even though.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I believe Dave talked about that. Brent Taylor for $1.99. Gio, please get a cowboy hat to feel the aura. I should get like a tall one, like cat turd gets. That was such a stupid photo, eh? The cat turd selfie.
Oh,
he's got like the long, the tall one. I don't know. I don't think I'd look good in a cowboy hat. I mean, I have this like huge thing when I go up painting. It's like this huge rimmed, like it's got like the net in the back to like protect my neck. It's like it's very groiperous. It's a huge one, but where's another super chat?
Generous groiperous meal.
Chicken nuggies. I remember the Dino nuggies actually were spicier for some reason. I don't know.
There you go.
I haven't had a Dino nuggie since I was like a kid, so I'm a shocker, right? But like, no, actually, I shouldn't say since I was a kid. I probably had a Dino nuggie from sometime between I was like 12 years old and now. I probably had one. I don't know, but man, this is annoying. I can't believe stream. Maybe I have to like pay them more or something. I don't know. It's like
I don't know, but time to go to the YouTube section.
Yeah, let's just go after the YouTube section in case YouTube Creator Studio.
This man wants to sleep.
I know. Oh boy. Supers. Here we go. We got see all. Okay, Brent Taylor, John Carter. We have Oros posting US 99 cents, which oh my god. And it's just the poo emoji. That's what it is. The poo emoji.
Oh, let it be.
Thank you, Oris posting. And subject change for $49 from your friends at the Alan Dershowitz Innocence Project. Oh my god.
We look forward to the check. Thank you, sir.
And our good friend Lou Templar for $10. Hell is a future where wife guys ask their Grokket anime AIGF if something is true, and the homunculus in its artificial womb gives you a thumbs up and smiles. Wow. That's
directed by Hideo Kojima.
And Dunk the short-legged Mac Daddy for $1.99. Gio, should the New York State GOP run Keemstar for governor? I think it's true. I mean, doesn't he live in Buffalo? I could probably go and visit Keemstar. And I thought it would like go on.
Is he seriously floated running for New York governor?
Has he? I don't know.
That just seems really silly. Hold on, I'm looking this up.
Oh boy,
it'd be really funny. is not from and does not live in Buffalo, so please stop using him to disparage the city.
I thought he lived in Buffalo.
Well, that's what I'm looking at that. Well, it's in his Twitter bio, so I guess so he is. Yeah, well, let's not have him run for.
No,
let's not
have Killer Keemstar run.
Let's not do this.
Anyways, Bolero 393 for $10. Due to the insensitive discussion of a potential TV show, The Ethno-Guesser, and the harm it may have caused marginalized communities and POCs, the digital archipelago will no longer be seen in... Oh, my God.
I'm not leaving.
Apparently that story was fake. I don't know. Lou Templar again.
Listen, good sir. I'm just pitching TV shows.
Yeah.
And it's about representation. It's about family.
It's not really racist. It's just that, like, the character actually has a deep love and respect for every ethnicity
it's a story about diversity in all of its human forms,
down to the most microscopic anthropological detail. It's actually, you can racist yourself towards non-racism by just knowing enough about other ethnicities and races.
It makes you a more patient and loving man.
Exactly. After a while, it's just like it cancels it out,
Yeah, it does.
So Lou Templar for $5. There's so many Muslims in New York City now. It's only doubled under Trump. Feels like London 2002. I feel the fear. I mean, are there a lot of Muslims in London?
I'd imagine so.
Man.
And this all really started after 9/11 too.
Apparently it's someone's birthday in chat. Oh yeah, Joshua Beebe for 189. Wish me a happy birthday, 41, and going strong. Thank you, Joshua. Wish him a happy birthday.
Remember, you're not over the hill until you're truly over the hill. Happy birthday, Joshua.
07 in the chat. And here we have, I believe, the final YouTube one, unless you want to give me money. Oh my God. From Dad, the Young in 2001 episode was Kino. Love from Wormwood. Oh my God. Wormwood. I actually tweeted the other day, where the hell is Wormwood? I need my updates on Wormwood Jr. I need to know what the Brap Hog is doing. I want Wormwood to come back to call people that certain...
Man, speaking of shit that you would never be able to explain to anyone on the street.
I can't say his popular phrase. I cannot say it on YouTube.
Oh, of course not.
Of course not. So, now going over to Entropy. I'll go from lowest to highest. So Owen Zaleski, $5. Hello, gents. I love you or both. I hope you're both well. Your art wish has been granted. Prude, check your Twitter. Please pray for my sister. Yeah, please pray for my sister, as she will be going into labor with her firstborn baby soon. Also, Judo Art Streams, please. Thank you both and God bless. Oh, that's good.
Well, congratulations to your sister, and I pray that it does go well.
Yeah, congratulations, my friend. And Zoan Zaleski for $5. I'm glad you like the art. If you guys want the transparent, such higher quality images of the frog, just DM me on Twitter.
Sure.
MD has been rainy and humid here too, so I know this feeling. Also, I've been trying to do more plein air painting. Any tips, Gio? There's so many tips I could give, but it's late at night. I think the best thing you could do is sort of I think try to like focus on the major shapes and not worry about the details too much. You're just doing, plein air is a sort of subtle art of trying to balance in a relatively short time frame the major shapes, the choices of color, of tone, of hue, and to try to create a sort of a lively composition, and to sort of like clear your mind of like trying to think of like, this is a thing that I'm painting. I have to have the detail of this thing in my mind. Rather, let the scene dictate to you what it shows you, rather than just trying to paint something that you think looks like a tree or a cloud or whatever. So that's a good tip. Sam, let's see. Sam153 for $20. Sneed. Conversation trumps debate for sure. Who comes up with this Jubilee slop garbage? Terrible. No, apparently, allegedly, the creator of this Jubilee podcast was a member of Bain Capital at one point. So I'm not saying anything there, but really gets the noggin jogging about if the guy allegedly was a worker at Bain Capital. But what do you think, Prude?
I don't know, but like I had said at the beginning, it really is the reinvention of the Ben Shapiro owns libtard college freshman from like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine all the cringe stuff that you can remember from like Young Americans from Liberty, like 10 years ago when you were in college, and then just make it so it looks like all your favorite people or all your favorite talking points on the right have been transmogrified into caricatures that they can make fun of.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
The Whatever podcast actually does that, but unintentionally. It makes a lot of like
they do that with women though. It's great.
No, but they make these like right-wing influencers chastising OnlyFans girls as like goobers. Like it's just
they are like, goobers.
Yeah. So it's terrible. It's terrible. Anyways, Serbian Cat for $20. No serious message. I just enjoy the show. Thank you, Serbian Cat. It's been a great one. And finally, Charlie Mackey for $25. Good evening. I hope you're both well. Reading foundational text. Why read it all? I joke, but there's an unimaginable amount of slop and evil, mostly modern, but also in the past. I often think most people should be shielded from ever needing to be exposed to such psychic pollution, which I believe was also part of the rant I did recently. So yeah, that's true. I think like in some ways, a lot of like knowledge can harm people, and I think it's not for everybody. But I still think that if you are capable of doing something good in the world, I think that's, definitely I wouldn't want to like pull up the ladder from anybody. So, yeah, that's
info hazards are real.
Yeah. Also, internet friend for $5. Thank you thank you politics for redacting Stephen Colbert's show, who used politics to accelerate the death of the late night monoculture. I have a whole rant about that I wanted to do, but we were pressed for time, so maybe next week.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's funny. Everyone's like, Colbert's being canceled. I'm like, he's talk about stuck culture. Like, what has Colbert been doing for the last 10 years? The same shit.
They were losing millions keeping on
really fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not really surprised. It's not cancellation. It's just a clump of staff. That's all. Why not worry about it?
They were losing millions apparently keeping him on the air for this.
Yeah, they were. Like, and also keep in mind he's been on the air doing some kind of TV show shit for like 20 plus years.
I think almost 30 years at this point.
Like at this point, like you're done. Just go into that good night.
Yeah.
Let it be.
Like in the era of Twitch streaming, there's no in like YouTube and
the last funny late night host was Craig Ferguson, and that was over 10 years ago.
No, but like all of them are just like losers. They don't like know like did you see the Jorts thing by what's that guy Jimmy Fallon?
Yeah. It's
like, who cares? It's like
you're all SNL former cast members from 30 years ago. Like, it's over. It's done.
It's exactly. It's like a steak at a church cookout. It's like you can't get any more blood out of that, I stole that from New Jack, the wrestler. I stole that. R.I.P. to a legend. I actually stole that phrase from New Jack. So he used some other colorful lingo that I can't use on Twitter, on YouTube. But yeah, that's it. Oh, the Norm Show was great. Yeah. Norm Show was great. But anyway,
I like how that show opens up with him just taking his own life. I've called you all here for a press conference. I'm retiring, and then just, well, he doesn't end his life, but he's got the gun. It's a great bit.
Yeah. But that's all we got. So thank you all. Like I say, if you want the 28 Days Later franchise review, that's fine. But yeah, it's really, oh man, my brain's frying. So next week we'll continue with the Burnout Society. We'll have more discourses to dispensate over, and dispenser of discourse and slop. There you go. And yeah, so this has been great. We'll see you on Prude's channel. And I'll probably have a content mined out. I might release the Zach Brown interview. That's going to take a lot of editing because he uses a lot of colorful language. So, what do you got going?
I'll be live this Thursday covering the news and some other stuff.
Nice. And you can also watch Prude and Oren again, where he breaks down the Russiagate hoax from the Tulsi Gabbard Obama revelations. So, yeah, I could say a lot about that, but it's too late. So, anyways, we always say, God bless, goodbye, too sweet.
See you, gents.